Happy to be here no matter what gender I am or who I'm filling in for.
See, our very smart public radio audience can follow that Venn-ish diagram. We are live at the Boston Public Library today and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And a quick programming note, BPR will not be at the BPL here on Tuesday or Friday of next week. That is because Jim and Marjorie and the team will be on a much-deserved summer break. Everyone will be back. I'll be back here with them at the BPL on Tuesday, September 6th. So yesterday at a donor event, President Biden said, semi-said, what some on the left have been full-on saying for years now, that Trump-loving, election-denying MAGA Republicans are, as the president put it, semi-fascist. So we're opening up the lines and the text lines. We want to hear how you're reacting to this escalation in rhetoric. Are you relieved to hear someone in the president's position firing the alarm about the derailment of democracy? If you lean right, are you worried about what this is going to do to the already fraught political divide in America? The number to call is 877-301-8970. You can also text in again at 877-301-8970, or you can tweet us. We're at Boss Public Radio, and again, the number is 877-301-8970. Sue, I think this is an extension of what we began talking about yesterday when we opened the show, which is the sudden flourish from the Biden administration, a lot of victories over the last month, and you look at the CHIPS Act that was passed, the so-called inflation bill act that was passed, the student loan forgiveness, not to mention gas prices declining, and suddenly that seems like the fuel into President Biden's veins. A lot of people have been criticizing the administration for not touting their victories, and now we see the president being kind of emboldened.
Well, I have been criticizing the Democrats for as long as I learned about political parties, that the biggest problem the Democrats have is they don't act like Republicans when it comes to campaigning, when it comes to getting their message out. You know, I would say the Democrats didn't need to wait, and by Democrats I mean Biden and his administration and everybody running in the midterms. They didn't need to wait to have these victories to be hitting this hard. I might argue that had they been hitting this hard as soon as Biden took office, and touting some of the victories they had, which were not big victories, and they did have problems, his poll numbers would not have dropped as low as they did. There still would have been people responding to the message. The Democrats continue to wait until they have these solid victories before they start hitting back. And listen, remember what happened when Hillary Clinton said a basket full of deplorables? As soon as that came out, she had to back off and say, well, not everybody, but guess what? It was a basket full of deplorables who were sieging the Capitol on January 6, 2 years ago. And when Obama said, clinging to your guns, right? I think what we're seeing is there are people who are clinging to their guns, and he had to back off this. So I think this is the right approach for Democrats to take. And to your point, and to our question to folks calling in at 877-301-8970, if they lose some people, who cares?
Well, it's got people paying attention, but it's interesting because I think that also Senator Elizabeth Warren has never retreated from the fiery language. She's made that fundamental to who she is. But nothing is by design here. You know, there's always a communication strategy. So I had begun to wonder, looking at what was coming out of the White House, were they taking the Michelle Obama approach? Let's travel on the high road. There's not always a lot of traffic on the high road, but maybe that's where they should be. But things have changed, and they probably find that something is resonating now so that they can do this. Is your phone
That's my phone going off. I'm sorry.
We're only about 45 seconds into the show. So, but that's what I'm wondering. Was there a recognition that there needs to be a shift in strategy here? And it certainly has us talking. It's got a lot of people talking after that fiery-ish speech that
Bernie
he made
Sanders,
yesterday.
You know, not a Democrat, Bernie Sanders. Caucuses with the Democrats, but votes for the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, but still hammers at it. He's never been afraid to continue to bring his message to his constituents and to his supporters as well. And we talked a little bit, this morning, Jared, about the Twitter account, the White House Twitter account, which has been pretty much very vanilla, which has been a welcome, frankly, respite after the Trump years. but calling out elected officials who were criticizing Biden's loan forgiveness for student borrowers by pointing out that so many of the lawmakers, especially Republicans criticizing it, had PPP loans, which they're not going to pay back.
So Jim Browdy loves to do quizzes. Shall we do a little quiz?
Sure.
Because, yeah, as you say, they're questioning why a forgiveness of somewhere in the range of $10,000 to $20,000 has been given to so many students. Want to guess how much Marjorie Taylor Greene had forgiven?
I know this answer, so I'm not going to say.
For the Paycheck Protection Program,
yeah.
That would be $183,000. Representative Vern Buchanan, want to guess how much
80,000?
Nope, $2.3 million he had forgiven. Should we do one more? Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz, who's he hired? That's really a frightening. I'm going to say 38,000.
His forgiveness was $482,000. So yes, this all was streamed out by the White House yesterday. As the criticism came in, they answered it back.
All right.
So we go to our callers and start with Steve in Taunton. Hi, Steve.
Good. I think liberals are getting over their skis right now, thinking that the Biden administration has done so well. They're going to do well in the midterms. They're going to take this. They're going to add seats to the House. Ridiculous. First of all, I go everywhere, and I listen to people talk. Nobody's talking to me about abortion. They're not talking to me about tuition. I go to Target. I go to Market Basket here. It's all about the prices, inflation. The prices, and having this now tuition bill coming out, which I don't even think Biden has the authority to do, right? All that's going to do $24 billion a year, every year they're going to add to the economy. Are you kidding me? It's like pouring gas on the fire with inflation.
Well, Steve, I would disagree with you that I don't think the Democrats think they're going to win, which is why I think they're actually taking this action. I don't think that they feel confident that they have the midterms sewn up. I think if they did feel they were confident, they would be quiet. And so I think that this is actually an aggressive act to make sure they both tout their successes. And I think from an objective standpoint, you have to say that Biden's administration thus far has been successful compared to other presidencies in terms of legislation that has been passed and delivering on their promises. I mean, whether or not you agree with it or not, it's been successful from that viewpoint. But at the same time, they have to get their base out to vote, and people who are driven by certain issues like abortion or like tuition, they have to go vote in the midterms as well in order for them to win.
Well, it's interesting that you would say that, because that argument about getting things done for their constituents, that's the argument that was given for Trump all those years. And we said to people, you may not like what he's done, but he's done a lot of good things. And Trump never got the credit for it that apparently people are now willing to give Biden.
Well, I said yesterday, if you had tuned in yesterday, I don't know if you tuned in, I said yesterday that Trump had a very successful presidency based on his ability to deliver on his promises and to deliver on the agenda. Okay. So from an objective standpoint, I think that's kind of where I'm coming from. I didn't agree with 99.9% of what Trump did, but he was successful in his presidency. And I think that's the message that the Biden and the Democrats are trying to communicate.
Steve, thank you for the call. And certainly people are talking about prices. They're absolutely not going down, and that is a major issue that the administration has to contend with. But I'll remind Steve that he's in Massachusetts, where the risk of reproductive rights being tampered with is probably nil, unlike the rest of the country where we see it's becoming a sea change. We saw what happened in Kansas. We saw people turn out in droves. They didn't necessarily win in Nebraska and Minnesota because people, women in particular, obviously want to answer the challenge that's been given to them about their own bodies.
We're taking your calls and texts. Here's a texter. It's time to call them for what they are, whatever the iteration, whether it be thin blue line, court packers, and pro-lifers, pro-gun nuts, etc. Everything can be boiled down to fascist fear-mongering. That's a texter. You can text us at Boss Public Radio. One more text. Just like with deplorables, name-calling gets us nowhere. How do Democrats plan to win folks over and get votes? I mean, that leads to the question, Jared, are there actually people to win over? Or are both parties simply just speaking to their their believers, to their supporters, making sure they get to the polls.
Well, that's the key, because as we know, midterm elections, it's the less sexy election, unlike presidential times, so you need to get people to the polls. But I think they're also recognizing that this is happening. This is happening in the special elections that we've seen over the past couple of months, and it's happening in primary season. So as we move closer, especially after Labor Day, where you really start to scrutinize how things are ramping up, they need to stir people in such an emotional way that they get out and vote. Our number again is 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970. Let's go to Shannon in Gardner. Hi, Shannon.
Hi. First off, to kind of answer the original question for why I called in, I'm really happy that Biden has finally called, the right extremists for what they are, fascists. And the second thing is, I think it's pretty telling, too. I was just listening to Steve talk about, people, all the issues and stuff, and inflation and tuition and abortion. I think it's pretty telling, though, that we have constituents in many different states, red or blue. We have, citizens that are speaking out against what the Republican Party is doing and overwhelmingly voting down some of these incredibly, I would call them immoral decisions, especially regarding abortion and, with what's just come out with tuition forgiveness and the efforts to battle inflation. I think that the Republican Party is a sinking ship at this point. And anyone who's willing to stay on it as a Republican is signing their own death warrant as a politician.
Or step forward and fight back, as we're starting to see. Of course, Liz Cheney would be a primary example of this. Ultra-conservative, many would argue, but trying to save the party that she knew and was literally raised on. And you see the Republicans looking at this huge identity crisis right now, and this can only fuel that when they hear their own party called fascists, and they have to have a very serious look in the mirror.
Yeah, and it's difficult to make the argument that they aren't acting in fascist ways, right? I mean, I think that's why Biden hedged it, saying, semi-fascists. But if you look up the definition of fascism, it's hard not to say, well, that's the behavior that we're seeing in the Republican Party. And, also to Shannon, what Shannon's saying and our prior caller, as someone who works in the media and has been working in the media since 1978, I often think that if I were to go back in a time machine and look at what I was talking about on the day that something important happened or during a period when something important happened, would I be representing correctly, right? So if we are not talking about how concerned our president is about the state of our democracy today, and we are not urging people to consider that there's danger. Countries have changed their borders forever. Civilizations have risen and fallen forever. Do we think we're immune to that? And if we took a time machine in 25 years in the future and then came back to today, shouldn't we be talking about this? I mean, we should be talking about John Davidson as well. I think that's essential, and he'll be coming up
at the end of the show.
At the end of the show. But we need to pay attention to this. And I think Joe Biden and the Democrats, aside from the midterm election, which of course is in play, are doing that.
Well, I absolutely frame it in the same way in my head, perhaps slightly differently, which is I want to be able to answer future generations when they come to us, as generations always have, to the older ones and say, why weren't you on top of this? How did you let this happen? We have to have ready answers. In our case, we're journalists trying to get those answers and reporting out the truth, and so you keep it in that perspective. We have Amber from Worcester texting in, I want the attitude back that Biden had in the debate when he said, will you shut up, man? That was the best. So, yeah, people are ready to, throw down the gloves.
Well, it's funny, the thing about Joe Biden, which I always remind folks, he hasn't changed very much in the very long time that, he's been in public office. But I do worry I don't want him off the leash too much, yelling at people like, hey, bud, step back, I'm going to clock you, I'm going to take you out behind the barn, and we don't want any of that.
No, he has to do it in his own style.
Yes, we're taking your thoughts on Biden's comments yesterday, calling the Make America Great Again Republicans semi-fascist. We're going to continue to talk about this after a short break, so stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're live from the Boston Public Library, that too.
I'm Carol Hills. The war in Ukraine is about politics, the military, and especially people.
This is not the war against army. This is war against the civilians. This is why it's so hurtful.
The fear is that this man has no lines. Nothing is out of bounds for Vladimir Putin.
Our reporters and producers bring you the latest on the war and news from around the globe. Join us on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Cornerstone at Canton. They offer seniors the privacy and independence of their own apartment and a community with care and support options to help meet needs now and as they age in place. cornerstonecanton.com/discover. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Patrick Kelly, Runway of Love, a celebration of the brief life and creative genius of a self-taught designer who transformed fashion. On view now, PEM.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jared Bowen, along with Sue O'Connell. We're here live at the Boston Public Library today because Jim and Marjorie have the day off. We're also streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, and a reminder that BPR will be off all next week, which means they won't be here at the library because they are bringing a series of conversations that we've enjoyed recently. If you're just tuning in today, we're talking about the comments President Joe Biden made yesterday, calling election-denying MAGA Republicans semi-fascist. We want to know if you're welcoming this new phase of the Biden presidency, the so-called dark Brandon phase, co-opting the term, well, we won't go into it. We can't say what the term is on radio about Brandon, where it seems with the administration, the gloves are semi-off. Give us a call or text us at 877-301-8970. Again, that number is 877-301-8970.
Peter from Mystic has texted us. I am so proud to see him speaking as if he and we actually won the election. I also think it's fine that he waited. No one can say he didn't try to work with Republicans. And another texter says, Republicans cry when they are called names, even though their leader calls everyone names. You know, that's one of the things that has always driven me crazy about, arguing with people whose feelings get hurt, and it's usually people who've been attacking other people. It's that great narcissist reaction. I'm going to beat you up, but I'm not going to be able to take it. And that tends to be where they are.
Including the former president, who's now has named a lot of names for people in his own party, like Mitch McConnell of late. Let's go to Alan calling from Wayland. Hi, Alan.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, good. So an earlier comment that was made on this show just a few minutes ago was the quote-unquote accomplishments of Donald Trump in his term. And one of the things that he did.
Ellen, I'm sorry, you're breaking up on us. Try one more time.
Wait, what?
No. Hey, Ellen, can you call? Ellen's going to have to call us back. Ellen, you're breaking up on us. Can you give us a call right back, and we'll try and get you right back on the air? Or find, you're probably driving through a rich neighborhood that doesn't have any cell towers. That always happens to me, drives me crazy.
Is that what happens to you?
Yeah, all the time. I would name those neighborhoods, right? They're also the ones that don't have enough housing for all of us to move into, but that's another show.
Yeah, here we go.
All right, here's a texter. Why would Democrats need to win over Republicans? Anyone who is still part of the Republican Party is either just plain dumb or intentionally fascist. Also, this love affair with Liz Cheney needs to end. She is one of the worst of the worst. Just because she called out Trump for what he is doesn't mean she herself isn't problematic in her politics. That's Will from Worcester. I don't know who it was that posted it, but Julia Kayyem kind of echoed it and amplified it on Twitter that a lot of people feel Liz Cheney is wrong 99.9% of the time, but she was right on the one thing that may actually save the nation. So you don't have to take the whole kit and caboodle with Liz.
It was a pretty significant thing. We have another texter writing, so Trump supporters tout the great things he did in his presidency. When I ask them to name one good thing he did, I usually get a blank stare. I can list numerous bad things he did if they're willing to hear them. Well, I know a lot of people in finance were very happy with some of the administration
tax
policies.
Cuts.
It made their world
absolutely
a lot better. It looks like we have Alan back on the radio. Alan from Wayland. We meant it. You did have a bad connection. We're happy to have you again.
Thank you for taking me back. Okay, so I'm not surprised the people in finance were happy with the Trump tax cut that went to the upper 2%. Everybody else pretty much got crumbs. So, but the problem is that got lost that the Republicans don't know about. They don't talk about it. The Democrats don't talk about it. But it's very important to remember that his tax cut was a trickle down, which, of course, from Ronald Reagan was not proven to be a faulty strategy.
Oh.
And what Biden is doing, if you think about it, is a trickle up, which is the way you want to do it. You want to inject money at the bottom, okay? So I just want to put out there that, Trump's accomplishment was a big trickle down that benefited the rich. And that is the truth. And we should remember that.
We appreciate you calling back, Alan. That's an excellent point. I mean, one is, and we learned this with Ronald Reagan, the hope was that if you give corporations and companies tax breaks, that those tax breaks will transfer into profits for them, which will transfer to paying employees more, lowering prices for consumers, keeping money in America so that our economy can grow based on the money that we're keeping. We have found, though, since Ronald Reagan, that often when you give tax cuts to corporations, they pass the savings on to their CEOs and to the major holders, and the money doesn't come back into the economy the way that we would hope.
And some of it did trickle down. A lot of people did get more money in their paychecks, but not nearly as much as the people at the top did, whereas what we're seeing now, there are caps to pay, and especially as we saw earlier this week with the student loan forgiveness, it phases out after a certain amount. So it does ensure that people closer to the trickle-down part of that scenario are getting money.
Let's go to Derek, who's calling us from New Hampshire. Derek, welcome to Boston Public Radio.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Just to go on to what Jared just said there, that whole tax break that the Trump people did, which I would argue is the only thing that they did during their entire administration, it was designed so that the early parts of it would be given to the lower income earners, and then over the course of that duration of that tax bill, that money shifts to the more to the 1% or 2%. But going back to the rhetoric of Biden, I feel like this is a year too late. The Republicans have been calling everything that the Democrats do tyranny, authoritarianism. Now Ron DeSantis in Ohio saying they're replacing the devil with the left in Bible verses. I mean, the whole thing is just kind of a joke to me, really. Like, they're so blatantly obvious. And if you still can support the Republican Party, you can't say that any of this is conservatism, because it's nothing close to conservatism.
The challenge, Derek, I think, in political messaging for everybody, for all parties, is the vast majority of people around the world have lives that do not revolve around politics. And unless there's an issue in their family, and there usually is, whether it's access to health care or an education issue, they may not care about the broader issues that the party they affiliate with do. And so often the messaging doesn't really start getting sharp until it's about election time, when people start paying attention.
Agreed. I would also say that, through our education systems and, just the nature of the media and the way our political landscape is now, there is no civics anymore. It's just politics. Half these people don't even understand public service to begin with.
Derek, we appreciate your call from New Hampshire. Thanks so much for joining us. That has been a fun period, but we don't have any more time for this. But we will be opening the phone lines and text lines later at the end of the show to hear some more from you on some exciting topics. How's that?
That's right. Now we're going to get healthy.
Yes, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. She's here for Ask the Doctor. You can call and text with your COVID, monkeypox, and general health questions. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
From the GBH Newsroom, Priced Out, the fight for housing in Massachusetts.
Live at the Boston Public Library.
The problems.
These investors who are turning
homes into financial assets. As long as housing is just seen as another way to make a buck, we're going to see these problems.
The solutions.
Increase the funding. We need more funding for affordable housing. We can't build these 4 units unless we have funding to do it. Market isn't working.
Available now at gbhnews.org.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Narragansett Beer, a New England brewery since 1890, offering 12 craft beers on tap at their new Providence Waterfront Brewery. Narragansett Beer. Hi, neighbor. Have a Gansett. More at narragansettbeer.com. And The Huntington, presenting Sing Street, the joyous new musical that lifts you up. Performances now through October 2nd at the Huntington Calderwood BCA. More information at huntingtontheater.org.
Welcome back. I forgot that I'm filling in for Jim. I forgot that I'm on the radio. I have to start. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Here at the Boston Public Library, I'm Jared Bowen, in for Jim Browdy. And because Jim and Marjorie are off, so I'm here with Sue O'Connell, who is rescuing me as we speak.
Well, it's been a kind of rescue each other kind of day so far.
That's right. So we're here at the BPL. We're also streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. And a reminder that BPR will be off next week. We'll bring you a lot of our most favorite conversations, most recent favorite conversations, and then everyone will be back here at the library on September 6th. So joining us now for another edition of Ask the Doctor, it's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. She's Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center. She's also a Clinical Associate Professor at BU School of Medicine and an affiliate at Harvard Center for Primary Care. She's going to take our questions and your calls and texts at 877-301-8970. Again, that number is 877-301-8970. Also, if you're here with us at the library, we do have a microphone, so feel free to step up and ask your questions here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely to be with both of you.
Great to see you. So I don't know if you had time to look at this suit that's been filed. The Moderna Moderna is suing Pfizer over the coronavirus vaccine. I guess we have moved through the pandemic, so let's all get along and work quickly to solve the problems. Any hot takes on this? I know it's one of those complicated things.
It's good news, bad news, right? I think it's maybe not surprising, but I think very much to your point, we were in this place where, nobody was fighting over technology. Everybody was working together. We were saying this is the messenger RNA. Pfizer and Moderna really were the first out of the gate. And now, as you pointed out, Moderna is pointing to Pfizer and saying, actually, it took two pieces of our technology. One was the way in which the messenger RNA gets protected in the body when it first goes in. And the second is our technology around that spike protein. And we really, kind of got the market on the entire spike protein. And you took it from us, and now your competitors, and obviously we're watching carefully as we're thinking about the booster, Omicron-specific booster coming out in the fall. And so there's going to be more jockeying, and this is the ugly side, I think, of a lot of what we see in pharmaceutical development. We see the innovation, and then we really need to back it up with saying, okay, let's just not make this about money. Let's make this, really about how do we make this accessible for all people. In part so that, the kind of motivation goes down for these companies.
Mm-hmm. And so there seems to be two bits of good news for the rest of us, which is it's not going to affect how things are administered. It's not going to hamper anything here in the United States, and they're not doing anything about this around the world, where we know that it's still a priority to get vaccines out. So as we return to administering vaccines here in the United States, we've just learned that more boosters are coming that are tailored. Are they specifically tailored for the variants that are circling now? So what do we need to know? Because it seems like what more do we need to know other than if you're 12 and older, you'll be able to get it, and sometime very soon, it looks like.
That's correct. So to your point, we're hearing more and more. In fact, we actually have September 1st and 2nd set aside for the FDA to be meeting, to be reviewing the data on these tailored specific, we call them bivalent vaccines. So it's using the old technology of vaccines mixed with a new technology that will be specific to the Omicron variant, which we've seen, since late last fall. And the idea is that we'll actually have more protection for all of the variants that are coming out. as well as the variants that are still circulating in our community. They'll be more specific for all of the things that have happened on the spike protein in terms of mutations. And hopefully they will actually be working and targeting our B cell immunity, the immunity that actually creates longer lasting protection. And so that is very helpful and hopeful. And remember, we are at a place where we're still seeing Omicron, BA5. I'm sure we're all so sick of hearing about BA5. It seems like every time I'm on Ask the Doctor every month, there's a new variant that we're talking about. But this is sort of, not still greater than 90% of what we're seeing circulating in our community. We may be on the tail end of that, but now we're still seeing another Omicron variant called BA4.6 that's on the horizon, and then BA2.75. And so all that being said is these vaccines that are going to be coming out are going to be targeting all of those.
Can I give you an opportunity to make a pitch to tell people to get their flu vaccine?
Oh, yes. I was also just saying before I came and joined you, and I was speaking to Jamie over there, and was really talking about how we are at a place where this fall, between thinking about what's happening, obviously with the flu season coming, and thinking about the fact that we are concerned that it may be a bad flu season, in part because people were less exposed to each other over the last couple years. The flu can kind of come back and with a vengeance. We also are going to talk, I'm sure, about monkeypox vaccines. Mm-hmm. I'm sure, there will be more questions about boosters for COVID-19. And then, of course, we're going to talk about polio and being vaccinated against polio. So these are things as a primary care doctor, and I take care of people all ages. So, from thinking about vaccines from very birth to very end of life, please, please, please help the healthcare system, help yourself. Make sure that you are scheduling appointments with folks in your community who can give you all these vaccines that you're eligible for, in part so that we can all move through this fall more easily.
On Star Trek, just want to interrupt for a second, whenever there's an international illness somewhere, international galaxy illness, yes, the Enterprise shows up, the doctor makes a vaccine, and gives it to all the people on the planet, and people are thrilled.
Yeah,
and saves the universe.
May we all return to Trekkian land.
Yes, so think about it that way.
Thank you.
Let's talk about timing for this most recent booster for a moment. We have Lorraine in Temple, New Hampshire. She says, I'm 75 and had 4 COVID vaccines so far, so that would be the 2 plus the 2 boosters. She had the 4th one on June 21st. When would be the best time to get the newest one? We also have people asking if you've had, we know a lot of people had COVID this summer, so if you had COVID this summer, in those 2 scenarios, when would be the best time to get the new booster?
Yeah, so the questions are slightly different. So Lorraine, in terms of your question, thinking about the next timing, great, amazing that you've already gotten your 2 primary series and then your 2 boosters. We're really still looking at the 5 to 6 months of marching out the next booster, similar to what we've done for boosters generally. If you have been sick over the summer, but you are still due for your booster, we still think it's a good idea, if you're eligible for the booster, to get it when it comes out and when that time comes, in part because, again, like I said, it's a different way of your body immunity system is looking at the virus in different ways, depending on whether you've gotten sick with it or you've gotten vaccinated, and just creates broader coverage.
All right, so we're in, I think, the phase of living with COVID.
Yes,
and now,
absolutely.
And we're looking at getting back to school. The numbers for kids being vaccinated are not great.
Yeah.
I'm sure that message will go out. I don't know if we're at a spot yet where schools are going to start mandating that kids have those vaccines, the COVID vaccines, to return. We're returning to theaters and movies.
Yeah.
The airplanes may or may not have masks.
Yeah, and I was sharing with Sue this morning, I'm starting to see, putting on my arts hat for a second, that it looks like some theaters will be doing, and some have already, it will do away with proof of vaccination and mask wearing and keep it elective.
And, it looks like the excess death rate has been leveling off in terms of, if you get COVID, there's a good chance that if you're vaccinated and seek treatment, you won't won't die from it. That's good news. How should we be thinking about all of this?
Wow. I think you just packaged all of the questions on people's mind in one breath, in terms of back to school, going to the theater, wearing masks, and living with COVID. And I think, these are questions that we as healthcare professionals think about all the time and are every day sort of reevaluating. So the first piece is around back to school, because I know that it's on so many people's minds. I'm a mother of 3 children and think about this a lot. And as we know, schools are now coming out and they're saying that we're not going to mandate masks anymore. We're not going to make it so that if you've been exposed to somebody closely, that we're going to make you isolate. We're not going to, we'll only test you if you're symptomatic, and we'll do a rapid test. No more kind of sweeping tests throughout the school. And I think that people who have children who are immunocompromised are likely going to be working directly with the schools, thinking, okay, not only how can I keep my child safe, but how do I make sure they're not ostracized if they're the only kid wearing the mask, and how do you create places of safety for mental health? But I think you're right. I think a lot of those things are kind of regressing, in part because, as you said, we are really looking at a different place in the pandemic. So many people, I don't know almost anybody who hasn't either been infected at some point, and I would love to, I see lots of people here in the audience. I'm sure people have their own stories or stories of loved ones. And we do have a high vaccination rate in pockets. So to your point, I think that the kids right now, we're still seeing very low vaccination rates. For primary series, for the kids 12 to 17, we still only see 60%. And for kids 5 to 11, 31%. So that's kind of shocking. And for the kids who are eligible for boosters, less than 18 years of age, we only see 8%. And so I think, to your point, is when are the schools going to start to require this? And actually going back to polio, the most basic of vaccines that's been required, and how we're now seeing gaps in protection in community, where communities are no longer enforcing vaccination. So there's going to be a lot more questions around this than answers right now.
I also want to talk a little bit about the COVID fatigue and the post-COVID stuff. I had COVID.
Yes.
I timed it right, so I was able to travel internationally, so it worked out okay. But I had jet lag, and I was still feeling COVID fatigue, and I am dum-bitty-dum-dum. I left my phones on top of my car yesterday and drove away. I left my other job and left my bag on the table to run. And I'm high functioning, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about everybody else going back to work, running families, trying to navigate the MBTA. Yeah. Are we being empathetic? Are we thinking about, okay, so you got COVID, it wasn't so bad, but now you're tired and fatigue's a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think our healthcare system in the United States is really good at seeing a problem in front of it and treating that problem, diagnosing and treating, but not as good at sort of anticipating all the sequelae downstream and actually setting up systems to do that. I know there are, long COVID clinics that are treating people for acute fatigue and sort of long COVID symptoms, but the things in between that you're talking about, we, as primary care physicians, I'm seeing it all the time, right? And so then you're sort of parsing through, is it COVID? Is it depression? Is it iron deficiency anemia? Is it thyroid? So it really kind of, it just opens up that list of things to be looking for. And I think, to your point, we are going to be seeing the consequences of what's happening right now 30 to 40 years from now. And we just don't know.
You are hearing Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. Our number is 877-301-8970. She's here for the rest of the hour taking your calls and texts. And again, if you're here at the library, see our colleague Aiden to ask a question. But let's go to our callers and start with Lisa from Boylston. Hi, Lisa.
Hi there. How are you?
Great, thank you.
So I feel like all the stresses in the world have finally reached a point in me where they are now affecting my sleep. And it seems like in the past I was able to manage it well. I had my routines. But just in the past couple of months, it's become too much. So if I wake up at midnight, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm now up 3-4 hours at a time. And I'm just wondering if the doctor has any advice on how to just calm my mind and just try to get back to sleep, because now it's just affecting everything else that's going on.
Wow. Well, Lisa, first of all, you're not at all alone. I saw nodding heads here in the audience, and I think it's a time of peak anxiety for our communities, and I think, for individuals. So, without giving you specific medical advice, and certainly I think worth talking to somebody about the stresses on your mind and talking to a healthcare professional, but also really thinking about broader advice, which is I think it's really healthy, even though I'm here on an amazing news radio, to take news breaks for people. I think it's, having media fasts for people every once in a while is a really healthy thing, and going out and connecting with people you love, doing things you love, recognizing that while there's a lot of heightened anxiety in the world, there's still a lot of beauty, especially, again, doing things you love. And then the other thing is just there's so many amazing apps and things out there to meditate in the middle of the night, and calming music, and just having rituals for bedtime. But that could be a whole nother hour just talking about insomnia and anxiety, and I'm just really thinking about you, and take good care.
Thanks for your call, Lisa. We appreciate it. You can tune us off. It's okay. We give you permission. It's all right. Just come back.
We have those conversations ourselves, to be very honest. I mean, we have a job to do, but also you're ingesting a lot.
Yeah.
Can we talk about monkeypox for a moment, or more than a moment?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really tough moment where you see this.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the communication. I mean, this is a disease that primarily it seems to be gay men getting, but the communication around this has been, I think, just bungled.
Yes.
Getting the vaccinations where they're supposed to be bungled.
Yes.
Unless you have people in certain communities who are stepping up, and that has happened, but only in pockets around this country. What do you see? How do you see this unfolding, and how can this be addressed?
Yeah. So I agree, and you is one of those things that you say, well, have we not learned anything from the last, 2.5, 3 years? So I think there was actually a great piece from the North Carolina State Health Secretary in Politico, who identifies as a man who has sex with men, and really talked about sort of the 5 key steps that we need to be making, and one is just around data transparency. So we've really talked about that throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, is how do we get more data? How do we make it available? I think the CDC is finally stepping into that and saying, we have this MMWR, we put out all these news science analysis, but it's really hard to access. It's really not transparent. It comes out pretty late, and we don't then tell people what to do with it. So actually taking the data, making it transparent, and then giving very clear, specific messaging around it. And to your point, I think saying, you know what? Obviously, this is not just a disease. It's going to stick with men who have sex with men or identify as gay or bisexual. But that is what we're seeing right now. And so name it and call it and legitimize it, and actually call into neighborhoods where there are, gatherings and parties and raves, and say, we're here for you. And we're here, to your point with the vaccines. We know you're at higher risk. We're here to do it now.
Not to malign the community, but support the community.
Exactly. Saying it's not your fault. This is what's happening in your community right now. And the whole point of public health is actually recognizing where there are outbreaks and addressing them respectfully and responsibly and quickly. And that is the next step that we need to take.
It always seems to me, if we addressed it as, if you wear blue nail polish, you are likely to catch this disease, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have blue nail polish, you're not going to catch it. And I understand the messaging where people think, it's a gay disease. I'm not going to get it. But at the same time, it just having lived through the AIDS crisis, is how can we not get the messaging correct?
And then the other piece is really, again, thinking about internalized stigma or stigma in communities. And, there was great data, again, that came out of North Carolina, in part because they're really not afraid to collect data and publish it, saying, actually, the huge number of people who are getting monkeypox in our community are Black men, and they are the ones that have least readily accessed vaccines. And so what's happening there? How can we actually, again, decrease stigma, meet people where they're at, and allow people to get the care they need?
We have a few texters about polio, if we can back up just a second,
bring it in.
and also want to talk about checking the water, the viral levels in Boston and other places, which is how New York, I believe, discovered that there was a polio outbreak. You know, a couple of folks are texting just saying, I have no idea what polio vaccine I got or when I got it. I was vaccinated when I was in the 1960s or the 1970s. My records don't exist anymore. How do I know? And this is also for millennial. I mean, everybody. How do you know if you've got the proper polio vaccination?
So the good news is that the polio vaccine has been readily available and mandated actually for all school attendance, basically since the 1950s. So, you know, when I see a child that comes in, you know, we start their polio series at 2 months and then give them another shot at 4 months and another between 6 and 18 months and then another is considered their booster between 4 and 6 years of age. So by the time you're 5 or 6, you should have had 4 shots for polio. And, you know, obviously for folks who are millennials, those data do exist. We have a vaccine database that even if you haven't gone to the same clinic your whole life, we can, I work with my nurses to import vaccine data no matter where you've gotten it. So we can access that information. If it is before electronic medical records, which feels like already so hard to remember. No, I used to practice before electronic medical records, but it has taken over our lives. You know, the fact is you could obviously ask a loved one, but if you're worried or you don't know, you can also still get a booster. We have polio boosters available, and it is not unsafe to get one. And so just remembering that is always available to you.
Let me ask one quick question before we go to another caller. Is there a time limit on that? So if you're older, should you go back and get another?
Great question. Yeah, so one of the, you know, again, this idea that if you're immunocompromised or if you have high risk of working with polio, so say you work in a clinic where you're processing the fecal species, where we're testing for polio, or you're a healthcare worker, you can go and get a booster. Okay. So again, there's no harm, and you can just add it for your list of things to do this fall.
Okay, we are talking with Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. This is Ask the Doctor. Let's go talk to Bob in the car. Hey, Bob, welcome to Boston Public Radio.
Hi. There seems to be an acute shortage of primary care physicians in the Boston area. My son moved back from California right before COVID. He then went out to California on business, had a stroke.
Oh.
They're ready to release him to come back, but he has to have a primary care physician. I can't find one. I call Mass General every couple of days, the intake office, and they cannot give me an appointment. You have a strategy that you could share?
Well, my strategy is you should call Boston Medical Center. We're taking new patients in primary care, internal medicine, and in family medicine, and we'd be delighted to take care of your son.
Yeah, well, he wants to be at Spalding, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's why we
can do that
too.
But you know, all that being said, is I could not agree with you more. We desperately need more people to go into primary care, and I wasn't being glib, in terms of that. I really think the pipeline needs to be expanded. I've been teaching residents for years. And trying to encourage more medical students to go in and, sort of thinking, what we do with our money in the federal government. How do we make sure that we're encouraging more people not to have such big loans and do loan forgiveness for people going to primary care and things like that. Those are all policies we're working on. But in the short term,
so they will continue.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Thank you for the shout out, and we'd be delighted to see him.
Thank you, Bob. Good luck. Good luck.
Further ease Bob's mind, I have a really good friend who had a stroke, started at Boston Medical Center, went to Spalding where he had a beautiful room on the water, and he's in great health.
Perfect.
Today, so.
And we do have label issues sometimes.
Okay, I'm not trying to give a label.
No, I'm just saying there are great doctors everywhere. And my doctor, I've had the same doctor since I was 14. Really, seriously, since I was 14.
Beautiful.
And she has sent me to doctors, all specialists in everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Wherever you can find one, they will be great.
We have another text question. This goes back to COVID. I'm confused. I thought, comes from Kay in Medford. She says, I'm confused. I thought a positive home COVID test indicates you're still contagious, but the CDC website we're trying to get back into this formula, says that after 10 days, you should be in the clear regardless of test results. If you have no fever or symptoms, can a person still test positive after 10 days, stop isolating, rejoin society, and travel?
Yes, Kay, unfortunately you can. So we're seeing for BA5, people are still sometimes testing positive 12 to 14 days out. And so again, I think that people are really continuing to follow CDC guidelines of 5 days of isolation and then 5 days of masking. But if you're still feeling unwell or you're testing positive, we do recommend you stay home for a few extra days.
We only have a couple of minutes left, but I want to talk about the hearing aids because, eyes, teeth, and ears to me, drives me crazy. They're excluded from so much.
We could talk about that too.
There's some great news coming about hearing aids.
I know, there really is. For so long, we've, had this kind of market on hearing aids where you have to go to an audiologist and you have to go back for several tests and you have to often, shell out $5,000 for a hearing aid. But actually, as of this fall, good news for the fall, is that we're going to have hearing aids that are going to come over the counter that you can work with your local pharmacist to help you kind of get the right one, and they'll be anywhere from $300 to $600, and
as opposed to
$5,000. So thinking about again, our life work at BMC as well as many other places here is thinking about health equity, and this is just another opportunity to bridge some of those inequities that have existed and create fuller, more beautiful lives for people who get them.
And so this is creating kind of good competition too, because people are going to want to rush into the market so they can. So there's choice.
Exactly.
It's so simple.
That's the beauty of the market.
Solution. It just makes it so exciting, and I just hope we continue to integrate the eyes and the teeth and the ears
not agree more.
into one. It drives me crazy that it's so segregated. I understand our American roots around it, but I just don't. I don't.
They are
get
all
it.
connected.
I'll throw in one last question.
Yes.
I know we're quickly running out of time, but Paxlovid, we just saw that Jill Biden got it as well. But people should. Is it still okay to take it? Or
Paxlovid,
even
please,
with the rebound?
Please, it is actually incredibly effective of keeping people out of the hospital and getting very ill, particularly if you're 65 years and older. We're still looking at 89% effective rate. And for people who are immunocompromised, it is a great medicine. So please do not be scared off by potential for rebound.
Just get some crackers and peppermints and get right through it. You'll be fine. That's all the time we have, Doctor. Thank you so much. Great to see you again.
Wonderful to be here.
Thanks so much. When we come back, we've got Callie Crossley coming, right? Is that correct? This is so exciting. She's
waiting
here.
in the wings.
She's in the house. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Newbury Court, a full-service residential community in Concord, Massachusetts, for persons 62 or over, committed to creating an active, independent lifestyle. More at newburycourt.org or 978-369-5155. Ready for an exciting trip to Vienna? Then settle in for a visit to the Schönbrunn Palace Gardens to enjoy the Vienna Philharmonic Summer Night Concert. That's coming up on Great Performances, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Trusted, local news. This is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
I'm Jared Bowen in for Jim Browdy. Ahead on Boston Public Radio, Michael Twitty is a chef and author of Kosher Soul, the faith and food journey of an African-American Jew. He'll talk about that journey. And does HBO's new Game of Thrones spin-off, House of the Dragon, live up to the hype? NPR TV critic Eric Deggans dishes on that, 20 years of The Wire, and his connection to the new late-career single from the legendary Shaka Khan.
I'm Sue O'Connell, in for Marjorie Egan. We'll close out this Friday's show as BPR has all summer with some live music, this time from legendary John Davidson. It's all to come ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. Stocks are trading much lower after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that the board will continue its commitment to stemming inflation by raising short-term interest rates.
Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive policy stance for some time. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy.
Speaking there at the Fed's annual economic meeting in Jackson Hole this morning, Powell says the Fed will use its tools, quote, forcefully to attack inflation that's running at a near 40-year high of almost 9%. The Dow was down more than 500 points at last check. Meanwhile, a key measure of inflation that's closely watched by the Fed shows price hikes slowed last month. The Commerce Department says consumer prices rose 6.3% in July from a year earlier after posting an annual increase of 6.8% in June. Former President Donald Trump is facing a deadline today to clarify his request for a special master to review the documents removed from his home by the FBI. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the court filing comes 2 weeks after the Justice Department executed a search warrant on his Florida estate.
The judge in the case is asking Trump's legal team to better explain what the former president is asking for and whether the Justice Department has been served with Trump's request for a special master. Trump filed a lawsuit this week asking the court to temporarily block the FBI from reviewing the documents until a third-party review process is in place. The filing also calls for the government to provide a more detailed account of what was taken from the property. Trump has repeatedly claimed, without evidence, that the search was politically motivated. The FBI removed more than a dozen boxes of documents from Trump's estate, some containing classified information. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
Ukrainian authorities say the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is being brought back online. NPR's Jeff Brumfield has more.
The state-owned utility Energoatom said that one of the reactors at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant had been reconnected to the grid and was slowly being ramped up. The plant lost power yesterday, triggering emergency systems at 2 reactors. The Zaporizhzhia plant has been under Russian occupation since March. Many parties have called for some kind of demilitarized zone around the facility, but the Russians aren't willing to give up control. The plant has also been subjected to repeated shelling in recent weeks, with Ukraine and Russia blaming each other. The International Atomic Energy Agency wants to send inspectors to the plant, and Ukrainian officials say they want them there as soon as next week. Jeff Brumfield, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow is down 583 points. The Nasdaq is down 342. S&P 500 down 91. This is NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. The National Weather Service says a line of potentially dangerous storms will sweep through Massachusetts today, and it's warning folks to be on the lookout for high winds and potential flooding. These storms are expected to begin right around now in the Hartford and Springfield areas and then head east into Worcester around 2 this afternoon. They'll arrive in Boston area starting at around 3, and once those storms do arrive, the National Weather Service says they will hang around for a good few hours. Forecasters also say there's a low risk of an isolated tornado and or hail, and they do say be cautious and be safe out there once these storms arrive. Some state legislators from Cape and the islands are pushing for the region to have more access to surgical abortion. The move follows the decision by the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade back in June. State Senator Julian Sears says he's been talking with other Cape area lawmakers about ways that local health care providers could work together to offer abortion services.
We actually think that the way that we're going to get this done is in partnership through several healthcare providers here that are currently on Cape Cod and the islands, and maybe a new one or two.
Dr. Jennifer Childs-Roshak, the president of the Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts, says her group does not have plans to open a clinic on Cape Cod, but they are talking with Cape and Islands healthcare providers about how those organizations could begin to offer services. Sox host Tampa Bay at Fenway tonight. The Pats are in Las Vegas for some preseason football.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include National Geographic Expeditions, trips with Nat Geo experts to more than 80 worldwide destinations, including safaris, cruises, and train journeys. NatGeoExpeditions.com/explore.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I'm Jared Bowen, in for Marjorie Egan, who's at home watching Secretariat. Sue O'Connell is here with Jim, in for Jim Browdy, who's slithering around the food halls of Greater Boston as we speak. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And a reminder that we'll be on hiatus next week, replaying some of our favorite conversations. We'll all be back here together at the library on September 6th. So we're joined now, again, live from the BPL, by GBH's Callie Crossley. She's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6 o'clock. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Fridays at 7:30. Hi, Callie.
Hello, Jared, and hello, Sue.
Hello, Callie. So I don't know if this falls under the be careful what you wish for category, but we are breathlessly awaiting the release of the redacted affidavit that was used to get the Trump search warrant. I'm kind of expecting a big piece of paper with a lot of big black lines through it that isn't going to tell us anything. What are you expecting?
It's now 7 minutes late, by the way.
TikTok. I'm expecting there may be some of that, but I think because they're so upset about it that there's going to be a hint of a few things that may lead in a direction that they didn't want any of us to go.
By them, the
FBI.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of two minds about it. Obviously, all the news organizations ask for this. Hello, tell us what's going on. On the other hand, I don't know what's in those classified documents that were sitting at his house, and it's kind of scary to me that I don't want to be in the middle of whatever they're about to reveal that may be leading us to even worse news that we know about now.
Because there's stuff
that we need to know, but because 700 pages of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, come on.
And because there's stuff in that could actually jeopardize relationships between other countries that we don't necessarily have anything to do with, which is also the kind of we obviously have something to do with everybody, but there could be relations between two countries that we have info on that Trump decided to take that could actually really disrupt the world. I'm not overstating this.
And someone has two things. First of all, think about all the brouhaha that happened whenever that conversation was released, when I can't remember who it was, said some funky stuff about one of the other leaders of the world. In passing, it was not classified information.
Right.
And it was like, it just blew up everywhere. So you have that to think about. And the second thing is, has anybody answered the question about why he took all of these? I just would like to answer that question.
Well, no, I think that's a fundamental question. Well, if some of it seemed to be personal mementos he thought were his.
No, not with classified documents. It says classified on it, Jared.
Well...
What are you talking about?
He thought his argument has been, classified or no, Kim Jong-un sent me this letter, so it's mine.
Well, I could even go with him on a Kim Jong-un letter, because I don't believe there's one in there. But to have boxes and boxes of documents that clearly say not only classified, but the highest level of classification, what makes you think that's yours?
Crossley, I'm raising my hand
because
go ahead. I think he had such terrible legal help toward the end of his presidency. It was the dregs of the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs lawyers who were advising him. And he said to someone, I'm just going to take these. And they said, sure, you can unclassify them. You're the president. What are they going to do?
Okay.
It's simply just a violation of some archive law. And so he took them, figuring like he's done his whole life. I'm just going to take stuff and see what happens. I'll fix it in the mix.
And I'm not sure there was a filing system, Callie. If you hear there were boxes in the White House residence, and it sounded like they were pretty scattered, so I'm not sure anybody was looking at them to actually read classified at the top.
Well, here's the other thing that gets me, too, is, have you ever, and I'm probably Jared not, but probably yes, you, Sue, because I've done this, which is move the boxes from your one location to the next, and then they sit there, and you never go in and look at them.
No. I have boxes and boxes of stuff. Yeah.
So
it just becomes a piece of furniture. As somebody who just moved, it just becomes a piece of furniture after a
All
while.
right. Well, we'll keep our eye on it.
Yes, it should be any minute now. As we've said, they're late beyond the noon deadline. So, Callie, let's ask you about what's been titled by the Washington Post anyway, buyer's remorse for the GOP regarding abortion. They're seeing what everybody else is seeing, the women in droves going to the polls, and we also see some people starting from the GOP starting to walk back their stance.
Well, this was really interesting to me. This is State Representative Neil Collins, South Carolina GOP. Let's say, here's his quote, "This weighs on me. I voted for the bill." He voted for the bill that says, a woman's fetus is you cannot extract a woman's fetus because that's not appropriate. So this is a hearing in which he hears about this 19-year-old, who cannot get an abortion, even though the doctor said the fetus was not viable, and the attorneys told her doctor they couldn't extract it because it still had a heartbeat. What he goes on to say is, the doctor told me at that point there is a 50% chance, well, first she's going to pass this fetus in the toilet. She's going to have to deal with that on her own. There's a 50% chance, greater than 50% chance, that she's going to lose her uterus. There's a 10% chance that she will develop sepsis and herself die. And then he adds, that weighs on me. I voted for that bill. These are affecting people. That's pretty strong.
So why wouldn't one consider these implications when voting on such a restrictive law, considering, you're voting to enact something that's going to impact at least half of the people?
I'm going to say what I've said before, is that I believe the image in the mind of people about women who sought abortions was, you little snarky women, Sue, who are flippant about life and this, this heavy decision that any woman would make wherever you are on either side of the debate. And I don't think they thought, would there be a 16-year-old, as we've discussed, who, was raped? I don't think they thought. There's a 19-year-old. The doctors have said, and by the way, the providers have been saying we're being cut out of the process and we should be able to say whether the woman's life is in danger. There are actually places in the country now where doctors are turning away women who may well be at the edge of death because they don't want to go to jail for having made a decision that's properly theirs to make. So I think that Neil Collins is probably a very strong for him, anti-abortion person, but the image in his mind of who has been seeking and who wants to continue seeking abortions was not this 19-year-old woman whose fate came before him and he had to deal with that and think about his decision.
Well, it goes into what Marjorie keeps saying, that none of these, and we're talking about men here who are walking it back, that none of these men have families, and I think maybe we're learning, to your point, if they do have families, this was not something that was talked about, so they really didn't understand.
No.
I'm not excusing them whatsoever, but it's all coming to the fore now. Now they're getting a very acute education.
Well, remember that guy who was, I'm sorry that I can't remember all these representatives' names, who said, this isn't a problem if somebody gets raped, she can just shake that whole thing out and he has no understanding of basic biology. So we're
it's about
seeing
the medical.
that.
The part of it that shocks me is the lack of understanding that terminating a pregnancy is a medical procedure and is often done for medical reasons.
Right. They didn't think of those people.
Not at all. Doesn't come up at all.
No, because I think in the image of these people, it's folks who are looking for a convenient way not to be pregnant because they were careless with their contraception, or they don't really care about what the consequences could be. So I think that's the image that a lot of people had. Just being, flippant about this. This is something to be serious about, which no woman would disagree. But this guy is a lot to weigh on now that you voted for this.
I was, as I've mentioned 700 times, but since I'm in for Jim and Marjorie, I can repeat myself. I know it's okay. We just came back from Greece. Every single person we talked to in Greece, our tour guides, other people we were traveling with, every single person brought up abortion. that were not no Americans did. Everybody else did. And my daughter, who's 22, said, I can't believe how openly they discuss abortion and discuss it in as if it's. I would never go on a tour in Boston and get on the Duck Tour bus and say, hey, what's up with that abortion ruling? Which is what people from Australia said to me, and the UK and Pakistan.
Right.
And it's just was shocking to me how lousy we have been at discussing a safe access to abortion care.
Well, I also would add to that I think that when you travel, again, it's brought home that if you travel anywhere that it's a global situation, that all of these issues, none of them stand alone. We are not America alone, and we can just do whatever we want. All of this has implications around the world. So the rest of the world, understanding that, makes it their business to know what we're doing because it impacts their lives,
I've been struck traveling during presidential elections where they know the deepest heart of our elections. They know who the candidates are.
That's right.
As somebody who has covered election day here in Massachusetts for a long time, and I would talk to people coming out of the polls who didn't remember the names of people they just voted for. It always struck me how invested people internationally are for the reasons you just said, Callie, because it trickles out throughout the world.
And not only that, Jared, they know history and context.
Right, context, the big word.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have these Ring doorbells on their doors, and we see sometimes funny videos. We also see a lot of people stealing things from porches. Now, it turns out Amazon is building, this is what kills me, because they're building a show out of this. It kills me because I love Wanda Sykes, and she's the host of this show. By the way, did anybody know that she had access to classified information?
No, I did not.
Yeah, because she worked in a government job. Can you imagine working alongside Wanda Sykes?
Cracking jokes.
Looking at
Let's see what's in here.
Yeah, what we're not supposed to see and cracking jokes. But yeah, so long story short, she's hosting this show based around these Ring videos, but a lot of people are not happy about this.
No, and I don't think they should be because it's, first of all, this is very lucrative for the company producing this, Amazon, because they just get user-created content. But what they're not happy about is, you can get some of the funny stuff, but this also allows folk to lose their minds, and you will end up seeing some stuff that is probably dangerous and inappropriate. I also worry about people actually creating content just to have it on Ring, to be on the show, which is not supposed to be the point of it. The point of it is supposed to be randomly gathering up what they think is funny. They're calling it kind of an old candid camera, if anybody remembers that, where the camera would just capture people doing goofy things or whatever. But when we talk about security and surveillance, our own Ed Markey has said this is very, very serious, and it's a long way from candid camera. And you start letting these people put this information on, there's more entree into surveillance into communities, and for sure, that's more entree into Black and brown communities. I can say that for sure. So this is going to end up being a nightmare of every kind of way. And to your point, I was kind of surprised by Wanda Sykes not getting the whole point. It doesn't, on its face, I guess people think, it could be funny.
Well, I'm sure it will be funny, but that's not really the point.
You dig deeper into this and you realize that they've used other videos that they didn't have license to, but just by virtue of the fact that, or maybe you do, because we sign so many things and tick so many boxes on our phone that we don't realize we've surrendered our rights to, but they've taken some of this video for themselves, for ads or whatnot, not to mention the fact that this is just a giant ad for Amazon.
Well, there's that.
Product.
And then what happens if you are the homeowner, they just use some of your stuff. Now, let's say you've signed off for the show itself, but I can see that there's something in there that doesn't allow you permission to do some of the things that the show would do with the video. Then what about if it shows some of your neighbors? Because just because you're on Ring Nation didn't say I wanted to be on Ring Nation, but if your Ring is showing what's happening over at my house, which if you've seen the videos, they're pretty broad. You can see across the street.
Can see, they've got the fisheye lens on it so that you can see quite broadly.
So I see this as being a big old nightmare coming up. And I think it's a disaster waiting to happen personally.
Well, my doorbell doesn't even work, so I'm not even really involved in that at all.
I just want to see the show with Wanda Sykes going back to her old job in classified government relations.
That'd be great.
That is, wow.
Well, talk about a new job. Meghan Markle has done something that I don't think we can overstate the importance of it. She has dethroned Joe Rogan from the top of Spotify's U.S. podcast chart. Now, she just has this one episode, right?
Yeah, so I think that we don't get excited yet.
Yeah, she's talking to somebody noteworthy, too. It's not just, So what's going on with Meghan Markle?
Well, she just, first of all, did I miss that she was having a podcast? I guess I did.
I didn't know.
So she has a new podcast called Archetypes. Some people may pronounce archetypes, but anyway. So it took the top spot away from Joe Rogan, not only from Joe Rogan, but in Canada as well, and in the UK from this other entrepreneurial podcast hosted by a businessman that's pretty popular as well. Her first guest was Serena Williams, and they were talking about the difficulty of making decisions, life decisions about where do you go after you've reached the peak. As we all know, Serena's been very public about it, and who knew what came out in the podcast is, I guess, she sought the counsel of Harry as she was making a decision to retire, and he encouraged her that maybe this was time for her, something for her to do. And obviously she was there when they were going through their own thing about stepping away from the monarchy. So, I mean, if she's going to have some great little tidbits like that every week, I guess, she could maintain that spot. But I don't know. What do you all think?
Well, I mean, having just watched her episode on Castle, the TV show where she played Snow White, I believe. I won't give it away, but she did have a very big acting turn. I had never watched her act before.
I think the statute of limitations on spoilers is...
It's like 10 years, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that her draw is so huge. In both, negative, you can't have a huge positive draw without the negativity, but the passion that people feel for her on the positive side. I think that if she, and listen, we all know podcasts are work.
Right.
Right?
No, a lot of people don't know that.
I know that.
And then they found out the hard way.
Yeah, and she was a working actor.
Yeah.
So I think she understands the amount of work that goes into delivering a high quality podcast, not just showing up being Meghan Markle. But I'm confident that this might be a big hit for her if she wants to do it.
So let me just add this. I think that part of her draw, which is part of a draw for me too, is the mystery. You don't know a lot about, you kind of want every tidbit. So after our first season where she's revealed many of the tidbits we are now not bored, but we've kind of heard it all. So she loses the top spot because she's not as mysterious.
Well, but I also can't see anybody saying no to being on the podcast because the guest is also part of it too.
And she didn't go to the Jubilee, right? So we have no juicy details from that.
Right. Not that I don't think she'd tell you anyway, because I think she wants to leave that alone.
I think she's been told to leave it alone.
You know what I mean?
Can we talk about Barbie
I
for
know
a
you
second?
did. Yes, go ahead,
please
Jared.
do.
So who knew there was this whole series? I'm sure that Callie Crossley Barbie is in the offing. Callie has a sly little smile. I think you know. Have you been working out a deal with is it Mattel? So what is Barbie doing, or Mattel, I should say?
Well, Mattel has just released a special Barbie in their Inspiring series, and this is Madam C.J. Walker, who was the first self-made black millionaire, and she did it with hair products for black women. It is accurate to a T. How do I know this? Because my friend, Alelia Bundles, is the great-great-granddaughter of Madam C.J. Walker, and she worked closely with Mattel for every single detail.
So you have your in for your own Barbie.
Well, yeah, I don't think they're looking at me, but I'm just so excited about this. Barbie, by the way, has in recent years not only done this Inspiring series, but a role model series with Gabby Douglas. They've got Sally Ride. They have Maya Angelou. The one that I really, really, really wanted was Ava DuVernay. I cannot find it. If anybody's trying to get rid of their Ava DuVernay, shout out.
Limited edition?
Oh my God! This one was sold out on Mattel instantly. I had to grab one of the ones on Amazon. So they go very fast because collectors have them. My niece found a Rosa Parks for me because that's very special, and so I'm very excited about it. Alelia also is a doll collector. She became an aficionado of black doll makers who are, a lot of times doing work like this where they're paying attention to historical factors and just, beautiful work. So it's a lovely representation. She's gorgeous, and it is a collectible item. I just already said they've sold out in some places, and I'm just really excited about it.
I'm glad that these things happen. You know, I
Yeah.
know some people just are critical of Barbie, are critical of.
Well, I've been critical of Barbie.
Yeah, I mean, but just
Yeah.
overall, just like there's no value whatsoever. But I think any time that you can introduce historical information via something that everyone is, little kids are playing with, I think it's just so huge.
And it's pretty interesting now because you have the Inspiration series, something fabulous like this, the raising up of all these women and their stories that we should know about, and they'll continue to be, held up because of this series. Then you have this whole other trend going on, the Barbiecore trend, which is just so silly and crazy.
You know about this, don't you, Jared? You have a
zero idea what you're talking about right
you're
now.
in trouble.
Check in, Jared.
Barbiecore.
Yeah.
Callie and I are going to be in Barbiecore this weekend. I might have to do a Barbiecore TikTok.
Okay, for 30 seconds you've been talking about Barbiecore with nobody telling me what it is.
It's this whole adults becoming Barbie. It's pink. It's overall pink.
What?
It's pink, 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 pink. Lizzo did a whole Barbiecore outfit. It's fabulous.
And there's a
great.
Barbie movie coming out.
Yes.
I did.
And so they're dressed in the fluorescent Barbiecore.
Exactly.
So so you just dress up like in Barbie clothes.
It's a huge
and I could
trend.
be Ryan Gosling Ken.
You could
be Ken, or you could be Barbie, because we're throwing gender out during this week.
I don't have to be Ken.
No gender norms.
That's right. It's a huge thing. So Mattel is operating in 2 arenas.
I'm looking at Lizzo right now.
Oh yeah, does she look great? It was so
exciting.
cute.
Now we're doing what Jim always yells at Marjorie for talking about stuff that nobody else can see, but we can.
Yeah,
you can go to the internet and see Lizzo in her Barbiecore outfit.
Google that. So speaking of Jim and Marjorie, they're on vacation. You are not.
No, I am not.
Work.
Yeah,
yes, I am.
Work. You have a new show this week?
Yes, I do. We're sitting down for a full hour of analysis with the Mass Politics profs because we're coming close to the primary here and obviously the general election in November. We're talking about a few many interesting things. The purpling of Massachusetts. There were some Massachusetts voters. Are they moving to the right and why? Kicking off from a very interesting article written by our pal John Keller for Boston Magazine. We're also looking at the possible, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but it's hard to contain, historic sweep of women in all the top government jobs if things line up in the next 2 elections. And as you know, Boston has been so far in the Stone Ages when it comes to electing women to the top government jobs. So the fact that there is a possibility that there could be a sweep or a near sweep is pretty darn amazing.
It's historic. It would be, yes.
And then we're looking at, before a few weeks ago, Republicans really felt pretty confident about grabbing a full sweep of the midterms. Now there's a couple of issues, not just abortion. I know you guys have been talking about that, but whether or not actually the loan forgiveness bill will have some impact on driving people to the polls, motivating, and some other issues. And then a bunch of other stuff. We're looking at, the Secretary of State race with Tanisha Sullivan and William Galvin and many other things, and their take on the new party that's the third party that's been being organized by former Republicans and former Democrats. They have an interesting take, my Mass Politics
I can't wait to hear it. Callie Crossley, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Callie Crossley is the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6. Also, she hosts Basic Black, which you can catch Fridays at 7:30 on GBH2 or on the GBH YouTube channel. Thank you, Callie. Let's hear it for Callie Crossley. All right, next up, the great writer, chef, cookbook author Michael Twitty joins us on his new book, Exploring the African and Jewish, I'm not going to be able to say that word.
Diaspora.
Thank you very much. And their shared bond. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
in the chills. You might need a break from his passion. Might wanna hide his little pills. Don't you worry about your... How about that? Yep.
For women who remember life before Roe v. Wade, the latest anti-abortion laws are bringing back painful memories.
She took me to our family doctor, the same doctor who had delivered me 11 years before.
For women who remember life before Roe v. Wade, the latest anti-abortion laws are bringing back painful memories. One woman's story this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And The Huntington, presenting Sing Street, the joyous new musical that lifts you up. Performances now through October 2nd at the Huntington Calderwood BCA. More information at huntingtontheater.org. And Mass Humanities, supporting the humanities in Massachusetts, bringing the exhibition Crossroads, Change in Rural America to the Essex Shipbuilding Museum starting September 10th, in partnership with the Smithsonian Museum on Main Street, masshumanities.org.
American workers across many sectors are attempting to form unions.
We are determined to make things better for ourselves and hopefully better for strippers that come after us.
We're talking about the recent efforts by exotic dancers to unionize. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jared Bowen here with Sue O'Connell. Jim and Marjorie have the day off, and we're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming too live at youtube.com/GBH News. And a reminder that BPR will be on a summer break next week, replaying some of our favorite conversations, but Jim and Marjorie will be back here at the library on September 6th. Joining us now on Zoom is author, chef, and culinary historian Michael Twitty. He's a 2018 James Beard Book Award winner in writing, and his book, The Cooking Gene, A Journey Through African-American Culinary History in the Old South, won the 2018 James Beard Book of the Year Award. His new book is Kosher Soul, The Faith and Food Journey of an African-American Jew, and it's part food history, part memoir, part recipe book. And we are so excited to have him. Welcome to Boston Public Radio.
Thank you.
Mike, I think I could talk to you about any one topic for about 4 hours. So I just love reading the book. I loved your perspective on the importance of food and how it needs to have the history and the story that comes along with it. But before we get into all that, what's your personal story? Talk to us about how you came to be who you are and bring this great intersection of foods and history to us.
So I'm really glad to say that, you know, when you meet people who you grew up with and they say you were always that person, it's a vindication that you're authentic. So, you know, I define myself in the terms of being African American, being Black, being gay, being Jewish, being a Southerner. And, you know, I come from strong people. You know, I'm nothing that my ancestors weren't. And that survivor instinct is what goes into how I live my identity and how I, you know, investigate, you know, food. You know, food can be more than just consumable. It can be more than just a how-to. It really is a how-to for who we've been, who we are, who we want to be. So that's kind of like, that's my journey. My journey has always been to discover all of those things and tie them back to just a holistic life.
It seems to me that the key word there for you is investigate, because you very deliberately didn't make this a cookbook. This is something else. So in that theme of investigation, what is this book?
It's a food memoir with recipes. I mean, a lot of food memoirs contain a few recipes. This one happens to have I don't know, maybe about 55 or so recipes and menus and ideas about how to make kosher soul food your own. But, when we talk about the phrase blank lives matter, especially Black lives matter, I fear that a lot of times people encounter the creative work of Black folks. They want all the secrets and the how-tos and the mystery, but they don't really want to know what we've been through to get there. And so I tell people, I said, well, if you can read every different version of Eat, Pray, Love, you can read A Kosher Soul, because the phrase lives matter means that, so not just the pain, the trauma on the asphalt. It is the daily joy, sorrow, the daily problem solving of our lives, and a lot of it has to do with our food life and our culture, and that's what I do. And also with Jewish life in America, I find that people think they know, they don't know. It's turned into jokes. It's turned into farce. The daily lived life of American Jews, it really isn't something that we've got to hold on. So that's why I created Kosher Soul, and the fact that there are queer Jews, the fact that there are people who have all these different intersections, is so critical for people to understand.
Michael Twitty, when I was growing up in the 1960s, I was raised Catholic. I grew up, and I'm Irish American. I grew up in an Italian American and a Jewish neighborhood, and actually went to Camp Menorah for 2 years, which is a whole nother long story. And I felt like, even though my best friends were there, I felt like I'm obviously not Jewish. Not that anything Jewish happened at the camp, but, and I remember getting on the bus one day, a different bus that I needed to take home, and there was a little Black girl sitting on the bus at Camp Menorah. And I was so excited to see her because I thought, oh good, someone else who's not Jewish. And I walked over to her, and I remember she looked right at me and said, I am Jewish. And I said, oh, okay. And I felt, it's so interesting to have to keep explaining that, yes, there are indeed Jews of many stripes all over the world with historic rooted stories of being part of the tribe. And that's also what you do in this book.
Absolutely, because, I want people to understand that Jews of African descent in the Americas have been a thing since the beginning of the Columbian era. So there's 1492 is the year of both westward expansion of the Spanish crown and of Western Europe, but it's also the year where the Inquisition is in full swing. And because it's in full swing, that means the Jewish diaspora is about to get a whole other perspective on spread and exile. And who's right along there? Africans. And the transatlantic slave trade begins in earnest 10 years later. So all these histories are combined. They ebb and they fall, and it's complicated. It's very complicated, and all of that, food comes through. So, for example, Jews who very early on go to the Caribbean, Brazil, Latin America, very quickly adopt indigenous and African foodways, and they become part of the repertoire of the Jewish holidays. At the same point in time, Jews moving from Spain into Italy during that time period bring the tomato, and those going northward go to England, bring cold fried fish, which becomes fish and chips. And at the same point in time, you have all these African ethnic groups moving back and forth across the Atlantic, spreading an entire cuisine from the American South down to northern Argentina. So when you come from all of that, what do you do with it? You kind of have to figure out how the mosaic should look.
Well, with this exchange, what you also do with it is something that seems very individual to you, this word kosher soul. What's the derivation of that?
I needed a fun handle on Twitter. I wanted to play on a lot of different words. Kosher has a mildly Jewish ethnic ring to it, and soul, of course, has come to mean, the essence of blackness. So I wanted something that spoke to those things. And if you look on the cover of the book, you'll see all the different halot One's blue and white. One's the colors of African liberation. One is the colors of the pride flag. One is all the above. And so I want to, put kosher soul to actual practice and show people that, I can be one braided challah.
Michael, talk to me about as a creative, as a chef, as a creator, and pulling from your vast, rich history. And I learned so much about spices and how spices were used as signals and messages throughout history, and how people ate their food and what they didn't put in and what they did put in. When you're creating a new recipe, what pulls you? What is it? Is it the looking to the traditional history of it? Is it trying to bring some intersectionality to it? Is it trying to modernize it? What drives your creative process?
It's all of that. It's the history. It's the purpose. It's how the ingredients talk to each other. The assumption, can these things talk to each other? Can they match up? And can they be just different enough to have a more interesting conversation? I mean, so someone asked me, what does kosher soul taste like? Okay, so there's some smoked turkey in there. There is some schmaltz, some onion in there, chicken fat and onion. There's other elements. There's, pungent spices. There's things from the earth. Basically, it's a conversation of diasporas. So sometimes when I cook things exactly as my best version of what I think it should be, given the research. And I'll go all out. And then when I want to make something anew, I ask the question, what if we take this out? What if we put this in? Can this talk to this? And would somebody be able to tell the difference? And I make new things.
And how is that informed by the conversations you've had over the years, and then in writing this book, sitting down in so many places with so many people, having very honest conversations?
Well, I mean, really, one of the things I learned the most, of course, kosher soul is written to be like a kitchen table conversation. Albeit you kind of get my side of the dialogue more than anyone else's. But it's written that way because I wanted to make space for my vulnerability, for hopefully the compassion in my voice, and make room for my mistakes as well. And so when I talk to people and I learn about how they deal with food, of course, one of the big things about food is your sense of purpose. Who is it feeding? Why are you feeding them? What are you giving up? What's the sacrifice? What's the sharing? All of those things. So I wanted to write something that, sounded like you were at my home, sounded like we were having that conversation. I wanted to extract from people what their purpose is in sharing with others. And when I got towards the end of the book, after a long, drawn-out research process and talking to people, interviewing people, I saw an amazing pattern, which was, if you read the chapter where I talked to Chef Chambra about being a Muslim chef from Philadelphia, and I talked to white Southerners who were not born Jewish, who became Jewish, who were formerly Protestant or Catholic, when I talked to African-American Jews about their various practices, what amazed me was, because of the common Southern origin of most of the people, there was this real, hardcore embrace of tradition. And you could sit all those people down at the same table, and they would have some very similar things to say about how they felt about food, what food they preferred, and how food shaped their lives. I thought that was amazing.
We're talking with Michael Twitty. He's a James Beard winning award author, chef, cultural historian. His new book is Kosher Soul, The Faith and Food Journey of an African-American Jew. Michael, one of the things I loved about your book is not really going with the old food solves everything. If we could just get folks to sit down and have a meal together, right, we'd all get along. And, pointing to elected officials government officials who are maybe against the immigration and migration of Mexicans, but can go to a Mexican restaurant and say it's their favorite without any sense of irony or hypocrisy. So what do we need more of in order to feel more connected to the food that we're eating in a way that really aligns our values with our choices? Or is that too much to ask?
No, it's work. It's avodah. It's work. It means that one has to really kind of get in the trenches. I mean, one of the things that I understood point blank was it's about process. It's not just the end product that matters. As someone, prepares food, we all do that differently. And it's striking, and it forces us to ask questions and have conversations. I remember being at one project I worked with Rabbi David Schneer in the DC area was we had a tzedakah garden, and a group of families who were from Mexico came one day and brought their children, and we were all in the tzedakah garden together. Tzedakah means not really charity, but righteous giving in Hebrew. And so they were gleaning some crops, some tomatoes, some tomatillos, other things. But they were also picking up a certain herb, and what was my epazote. And I knew what epazote was, but from a different name. And I didn't really like the smell of it. But they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much epazote here. We have to get it. And so, I learned more from that incident of why they picked the epazote, because it helped you, it helped beans and other foods not be as gaseous in the system. And it's also medicinal. And so they were really happy. I was happy because I didn't have to pick the epazote out of the garden. And I was really happy to learn from them some things about their own medicinal and culinary traditions. And that's what it takes. It really does take deep conversations, engagement that's uncommon. And, I appreciate that you appreciate that. I'm not a kumbaya guy. I think that conversations, for some people, are sacrifices. Conversations are surrenders. And, I know they don't have to be, but they also should be civil as possible. And they should engage all the senses.
Well, speaking of gardens, you ground us in your book in a way I think you use gardens and seeds to ground yourself. Talk to us about what they represent to you, what that exchange, what that process of growth, and when you visit gardens, what that means to you.
Well, it's part of the chapter where I talked to Shawnee Mink, who is part of the one of the founders of the Jewish Farmers Network. And this young woman is remarkable because, she and I had a couple of good conversations about being Black American in the garden, being Jewish American in the garden, and how, for one, lack of land or lack of access to land was something that has plagued both of our traditions, or both of my traditions, both of her traditions. And that it was also an issue of thinking, oh, it's not slavery no more. We don't have to go into a field. Oh, we Jews don't do that. We're doctors and lawyers and professionals. We don't do that, which robs both communities of an ancient agrarian heritage in which a lot of our values are grounded. It's the sharing, the gleaning, the patience, the delayed gratification, the honor to nature and to the creator who made it. All those things and beyond are attached to our relationship with the land. So for me, a garden is a text. A garden is a history chapter. A garden is a medicine cabinet. A garden is an archive of stories, if you curate it right. Something you can, pass on, because those seeds, as long as they're cared for, will be everlasting. I use heritage gardens, and I have 3 I think I have plants for in the book, a plan of what to grow, so people can understand these ingredients have their own narratives and their own stories, and they all came about at different times, not all at once. And it wasn't as easy as convenient as people think it is. Over time, you got a tomato, an eggplant, or a carrot or dill or whatever the ingredient may be, or okra or rice. It wasn't all at once. And when it did come together, after all that time waiting, magical things happened.
We're talking with Michael Twitty. Michael, you've also had to overcome. I love your realism in life. It wasn't like you just showed up and said, "Hey, here, try this. I cooked it," and people went, "Great, come on in, put it on the table." You actually have overcome challenges, both of perception and just of people how they view their own traditions and their food, but. You persevered, as they say, and it's been to great reward. No.
Well, I sometimes I look back and go, I don't know what y'all had a fuss about, because now we're talking about we're pushing back on the narrative of slavery wasn't that important, it wasn't central, it wasn't a deep part of our history. That's the narrative. So when people, when I was doing interpreting much more before Rona, I got to tell you, I had people on one side going, "Why you gotta dress like a slave?" They not understanding that this isn't like my persona. I'm not playing a game, not cosplaying. This is something that I do on my professional hours, interpreting the foodways of the enslaved. I am not speaking as a person from the past. I'm speaking as a person who lives right now. But there was still this perception of, wild lies were told on social media about me, that I actually did this as some kind of horrendous show for white people or something. And I'm just like, that's wild. And the other half was just like, "Oh, you're an ally," because I'm like, no. And they're like, "Oh, you're just a race baiter who pretends you know history." I was glad I couldn't make anybody happy. I thought it was great.
You were just Michael Twitty. How about that?
I was just me. How about that?
How about that?
Now we have folks going, "Oh no, they're going to take away our history." I'm like, because guess what? I'm still here. I'm doing what I'm reminding people. This is not to be thrown away. This is not to be undiscussed. This is not to be ignored in front of our children.
Well, Michael Twitty, we couldn't be more thrilled to have read the book or to have you joined us today. Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to talk to you. All right. Michael Twitty is a James Beard winning author, chef, and cultural historian. His new book is Kosher Soul, The Faith and Food Journey of an African-American Jew.
Thank you so much for being with us. We do have an update. The Justice Department has released the Mar-a-Lago affidavit. A lot is still to be digested. Apparently, it's 54 pages. Lots, as we expected, is blacked out, redacted. So far, the New York Times has reported the following, that in those boxes, they found a total of 184 documents with classification markings, including 25 marked top secret. Many of the materials included the highest national security restrictions, requiring they be held in controlled government storage facilities and barring them from ever being shared with foreign governments to protect clandestine human sources. If we can keep scrolling down, redactions blank about half of the affidavit. So that's what we are learning right now.
Yeah, that means there are people who would be in danger if that information had been let out. So we'll keep you posted as we learn more,
yeah,
right?
Just over the next hour. But it does seem pretty serious.
Well, we are going to move on for right now. And, it's 90 degrees out. So what do? You watch TV, put the AC on. That's it. We've got a guest for you if that's what you've been doing. NPR TV critic Eric Deggans is here. He's going to talk about House of Dragons, which I know Jared couldn't be happier about. 20 years of The Wire.
Did you just call me out for not watching Game of Thrones?
No, I was just giving you a little
option. Did I just call myself out for not watching Game of Thrones?
You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're live from the Boston Public Library.
Multiple shutdowns on the MBTA.
How am I going to commute from Roxbury to Dedham?
Like the last couple of days, I've already had to take like $40 Ubers to get to work. So yeah, it's not great.
Will the repairs make our public transit more reliable?
We ask people to be patient for the next 30 days as the T does 5 years worth of work.
From GBH News, 30 days to save the T. Follow all the updates at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And American Repertory Theater presenting Twilight, Los Angeles 1992. Anna Devere Smith's powerful Tony Award-nominated play about the LA riots. Opens August 28th. Tickets at amrep.org. And Always Health Partners, officially becoming Mass General Brigham Health Plan to advance their integration within the Mass General Brigham Health System. You can learn how they can support your wellness goals by visiting alwayshealthpartners.org.
He's Jim Browdy.
And she's Marjorie Egan, and this is 89.7 WGBH, WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. Boston's local NPR.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jared Bowen, along with Sue O'Connell, because Jim and Marjorie have the day off. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Joining us now is Eric Deggans. He is NPR's TV critic and a regular here on BPR. He'll join us via Zoom to talk about House of the Dragon, A League of Their Own, and his tie to the latest single from R&B icon Shaka Khan. Eric, so wonderful to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Shaka Khan. We'll get to that in a minute.
Actually, Eric, I have to tell you before Sue starts, the last time I was on with you, you told me to watch Only Murders in the Building. I'm a man of my word. I went home and started watching. I've only watched the first season because I wanted to stretch it out. I don't want it to end, and I loved it.
All right. We love to hear that.
Don't want to put too much pressure on you, but can you tell Jarrett why he should or should not be watching House of the Dragon, and if he needs to watch Game of Thrones before he watches House of the Dragon, which is the prequel that we're now watching on HBO?
Right. Well, what I would say is that I think the average person has heard enough about Game of Thrones just from the way it's been talked about in general news circles that you could probably watch House of the Dragon and enjoy it. The one of the tricks that these kind of shows always have to do is that they have to balance telling a story that anybody can jump into from the first episode, but also give the kind of depth so that the super fans can get in there and fill out their Wikipedia entries and track who's from which family and which person did that, and so House of the Dragon kind of does that. It's set 200 years before the events of Game of Thrones, and it's set about 172 years before the birth of Daenerys Targaryen, the main female character in Game of Thrones. And so we're getting a sense of her family and how it came to the way that we saw it when Game of Thrones opened, where that family was kind of on a downslope and was looking to rebuild its power.
It's going to be hard for it to match the success, obviously, of Game of Thrones. I saw a great Twitter picture of somebody outside a New York apartment building, and you could see that everybody was kind of like the old days of MASH. Everybody was watching the debut of it. You could tell by the way the light was flickering in their rooms. What's your take on it? Do you think it's worthy of it, or we just going to give it some more time and watch, or we'll just take it as it is?
Well, I guess what I would say, I saw one reviewer who said it's good enough. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's what I would say about House of Dragon. I've seen 6 episodes so far, and I feel like it's good enough, particularly for people who are fans of Game of Thrones and missed that series, to sort of re-enter that world in a different place and re-experience a lot of things that they loved about Game of Thrones, which is the high-end production values and the dragons and the sword fights and this sort of fantasy world that mirrors sort of medieval times. All of that is there for people who want it. The problem that I have with the show is that what really made Game of Thrones powerful for me was the characters. I loved seeing many of the most compelling characters from that show were kind of indelible, and they were introduced to us in the very first season, in the very first episodes. And then they got to the dragons, and then they got to the Nightwalkers, and then they got to the wizards, But, Game of Thrones started out by giving us this, smorgasbord of really compelling characters, and we got involved in their stories before they dazzled us with all of the special effects and the supernatural, characters. The House of the Dragon starts there. One of the first things we see is a dragon. And I think, unfortunately, what suffers is compelling new characters that make us sort of reinvest in the show the way that we invested in Game of Thrones. Now, maybe the series will get there in episodes I haven't seen, and certainly people who are fans of the show may enjoy it a lot more because they may know the backstories of these characters in a way that even I don't. But for me, I only saw one or two really memorable characters, and even they weren't always doing memorable things. And I think that's something the show really needs to work on.
All right, so let's ask you about a show where I have seen the prologue or the jumping off point, and that would be A League of Their Own. People might remember that movie. Let's ask you on the other side of a little piece of the show we have here. This is from the pilot episode of A League of Their Own. Here, two of our main protagonists, played by Darcy Carden and Abby Jacobson, are stepping into tryouts, seeing for the first time dozens of women gathered together playing baseball in the World War II era.
Got an arm like a shotgun. Maybe that's what I'll call you, Shotgun Mama.
Maybe keep working on that.
I didn't know this many girls play ball.
How could you? There's never been anything like this before.
Get your game faces on.
So for people who don't know, the movie was directed by Penny Marshall, Madonna, Rosie O'Donnell. So how does this compare? Should it be compared to the film?
Well, it's impossible to not compare it, right? Because it has the same name and it has the same concept and it's focused on the same team. Basically, it tells the same story. The creation of an all-female baseball league during World War II when most of the male players were sent overseas to fight in the war. And but the characters are reimagined. So even the lead character, who's also a talented catcher in the same way that Gina Davis's character was, that character is very different in the TV show. Gina Davis's character was a reluctant participant in the league. She basically joined so that her sister could also be picked up in a team. They wouldn't pick up her sister unless she played too. And she always had a strong tie to her husband and always had the sense that she wanted to get back to her home life. In this one, the character desperately wants to be a part of the league, is questioning her ties to her husband, and ultimately comes out as a gay woman who gets into a relationship with another player. That player is played by Darcy Carden, and that seems sort of loosely modeled on the character that Madonna played. There's a character that's loosely modeled on the character that Rosie O'Donnell played, but none of these characters are direct copies. They have some of the same attributes, and they kind of have physical similarities. But other than that, they're not the same. And the TV show spends a lot more time talking about gay players. There are several women on the show who are gay at a time when being openly gay wasn't often done. And then they also have a whole universe of black characters that's introduced by a black woman who initially tries to join the female team and then winds up trying to find another way to play as a pitcher. And we get to see a whole universe of black characters in a black community that was not, of course, featured in the feature film.
So a more accurate representation of what life actually might have been like for people, for women playing in that time.
I mean, it's hard to know how many women might have been closeted in reality, on that team. But what it does do is it just sort of tackles subjects that the original movie only kind of hinted at.
Right.
The original movie kind of hinted that there were some women on the team who probably were gay. The original had one scene where a young black girl threw a baseball to one of the white female players, and said, there was a sense that maybe one day you'll be able to play too. In the TV show leans into all of that and fully explores it and creates these characters. And, I said earlier that, the challenge for House of the Dragon was to create new characters that are compelling. That's the challenge for A League of Their Own, and that's a challenge they meet. This show creates it creates new versions of old characters and new characters. The black character and all of her friends and family. A lot of times when a show diversifies and creates a character of color, they might create one or two characters of color, and you just get this smattering of sort of a nod toward diversity. This show created two main black characters that spend a lot of time together, best friends. And then there's a whole universe. We see, her mom, her dad. We see the husband of the other, one of the other characters who eventually gets drafted. We see all their friends and family. We really get to see a whole realized black community. And then it turns out that this black, woman has a relative, an aunt, who has sort of a gender bending past and is estranged from, the character's mother. So we get gay issues, we get race issues explored much more fully than they ever could have been done in any film, let alone the film that was created by Penny Marshall.
And we should just point out, a colleague of ours just shared that a baseball player who inspired A League of Their Own recently came out at age 95, according to Insider. Maybelle Blair is her name. She was part of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, which is just lovely.
Yeah.
95,
Imagine
that's
there
fabulous.
might be one or two lesbians playing. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'd be down for that. I'd be down for that.
Exactly. and it's so interesting because Abby Jacobson, who plays the main character, the catcher, Casey, also announced an engagement to her female fiance. Yep. And so there's a sense that she is sort of coming out more fully in Hollywood as this story is coming out and is being featured, to the world.
Life imitating art, imitating life, imitating art.
You got it.
We are speaking with NPR TV critic Eric Deggans.
All right, so speaking of universes, the Better Call Saul Breaking Bad universe has come to at least a close right now. I was along for the entire ride. I was sad when it ended. I was thankful for Carol Burnett showing up on it. I have a number of comments, but Eric,
I'm getting the sense that you watch a lot more television than your buddy over there.
I do. I watch a lot.
Can I
of
tell you?
television.
I'll tell you a quick horrible story. So once I was interviewing Bryan Cranston, and this was live on stage. And he asked me about Breaking Bad, and I had to admit that I had only just begun watching it. But it was for a really good reason, because I loved him so much in Malcolm in the Middle that when I heard about what Breaking Bad was, I didn't want to see the father from Malcolm in the Middle in this horrible show. I did go back, and so of course he raked me over the coals in a very kind way. He's a lovely human being.
He's a lovely human.
He raked me over the coals.
But yes, Eric,
I did go
do
back and
indeed watch a lot of television. And I want to say about Better Call Saul, the thing I love most about this series is that when they brought these flashback scenes in, they didn't try to age the characters or de-age the characters. They just dropped them in and said, use your imagination. It's 10 years earlier. So, I love that respect that they gave me. What'd you think about it?
Well, I don't know if this was their design. I mean, what Better Call Saul was many degrees difficulty harder than Breaking Bad. Yeah. Breaking Bad was essentially telling a linear story. It had a few moments when it had flashbacks to sort of tell us a little bit about Walter White's backstory, but for the most part, it was a linear story that went from point A to point Z. What Better Call Saul was trying to do, number one, it's a spinoff that really didn't want people to get caught up in, you're going to see the origin story of Gus, and you're going to see the origin story of Mike, and you're going to see the origin story of all these characters from Breaking Bad. They didn't want it to be a cavalcade of origin stories. So in the beginning, it was focused on new characters and Saul, the person who would become Saul Goodman. He was called Jimmy McGill back then, played by Bob Odenkirk. And eventually what the series did was it moved back and forth between the time before Breaking Bad, before Jimmy McGill became Saul Goodman, this slick attorney who represented a lot of drug dealers and gangsters. And after Saul Goodman, when Walter White kind of imploded, his whole drug empire became public, and the authorities started looking for Saul Goodman, and he had to go in hiding, assume the identity of this guy named Gene Tagovic, and become a manager of a Cinnabon in Omaha, which is like a fate worse than death for a guy like that, who loves the attention, loves prominence, loves wealth, loves.
He was a good manager, though. We have to say he ran a good Cinnabon.
He was conscientious.
Yes,
let's put it that way. He made sure the work got done, right? But after a while, like somebody trying to quit smoking, he could only white knuckle his way through that life for so long. And what we saw in the finale episodes is that eventually he let go of it. And returned to who he was and started pulling scams, and then eventually came to the attention of the authorities. And along the way, they not only gave us great backstories for Gus Fring and for Mike Ehrmantraut, these great characters from Breaking Bad. Lalo, this guy who's only mentioned once in Breaking Bad, they create a character and give him this amazing story where he's an antagonist.
We lost some audio. There he is.
And so we get to see his story, and right when it wraps up, there's this shocking event that happens. A lawyer is killed, and it prompts Saul's wife, Jimmy's wife, to quit being a lawyer and to leave him. And it sets up the redemption at the end where he finally takes spoiler alert. He finally takes responsibility for all his crimes. I give Better Call Saul props because what they were trying to do was so much harder than what Breaking Bad was doing, and you could get a sense watching Better Call Saul that who were more assured, they were better at the craft than even they were when they were making Breaking Bad, and they were operating on multiple levels of difficulty, enough so that there's whole podcasts dedicated to dissecting every episode. Mm-hmm. Well, I really did an amazing job.
Eric, I'm going to interrupt you. Since we've established that I don't watch enough television, according to both of you, let's skip over to song for a second, shall we? And so you're going to tell us on the other side of this how you know so much about Chaka Khan. But here's a sample of her latest song, just released, Woman Like Me. First of all, it's super exciting just to be able to say Chaka Khan on the radio. How do you know so much about Chaka Khan?
Well, I talked about this on the Pop Culture Happy Hour podcast. I am a musician. I play drums and bass and sing. And when I was in college, especially, I was a professional musician. I supported myself that way. I was in a band that was signed to Motown Records. The guitar player in that band is a good friend of mine named Greg Pagani. And Greg just co-wrote and produced the song you just heard. And of course, it's amazing to see Chaka Khan have a new song out. She's almost 70 years old, which is hard to imagine. And, she has had her personal struggles. So there's been times when she's appeared live and her voice hasn't necessarily been up to snuff. And so people were wondering, can she sing again? Can she sing a hit again? Can her voice power a hit again? I think all of that gets answered in this song, which is so good. They did such a great job. And just on a personal note, it's great to see friends who I once played in a band with playing with the legends. We had a band where we used to play a version of Feel For You. We used to play Ain't Nobody. Now he's working on new material with her. And, I won't bore you with it, but, I went to Indiana University where I met a bunch of musicians, worked with a bunch of musicians who are all, the drummer for Saturday Night Live and, backing up Billy Joel and backing up Foreigner and, backing up Phil Collins and Bob Seger. And my friends have gone on to some pretty amazing gigs, but this is a really great one. And I'm happy to spread word about the song because it's important for us to hold on to our heroes and pay attention to them when they do great new work.
And people are always rooting for Shaka Khan. I mean, that's, I saw her once, some 35 years ago, had a really bad night, and then the next night we saw her and she was great, so.
I know, exactly. She can be inconsistent. It's like great artists, I'm convinced, see the world a little differently than the rest of us. And sometimes that makes existing a little difficult for them. But when they are able to, harness the energy of their creative spirit and produce really great work, it's such a boon to us.
Well, we're about to meet one of them. He just walked into the studio.
Yes,
we're very excited
are.
about this.
Eric Deggans, thank you so much for joining us. You're NPR's TV critic and regular on BPR. We'll be watching the same TV shows together, so don't you worry. We'll talk more in a little bit. Thanks so much. And as Jared mentioned,
because I don't know about that other Jamoke next to you.
Hey, at least I watch what you tell me to watch.
I'll bring him up. Don't worry. We're going to talk with John Davidson.
That's
the next one. We're going to talk with John Davidson and get some great music from him. I'm so excited about this. Of course, you know him from The Tonight Show. You know him from Hollywood Squares. You know him from That's Incredible. And you know him from his live music. He's going to join us right here at the Boston Public Library, where you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
For women who remember life before Roe v. Wade, the latest anti-abortion laws are bringing back painful memories.
She took me to our family doctor, the same doctor who had delivered me 11 years before.
For women who remember life before Roe v. Wade, the latest anti-abortion laws are bringing back painful memories. One woman's story this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Johnson & Wales University, helping to prepare graduates for impactful careers using a collaborative, interdisciplinary approach to learning. You can explore more at jwu.edu. And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in Westboro, Mass. Proud to support the GBH News Worcester Bureau, part of GBH's work to be closer to those they serve. NewEnglandRecoveryCenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jared Bowen, in for Jim Browdy. Sue O'Connell is here, in for Marjorie Egan. They're both out. We're here at the Boston Public Library and streaming youtube.com/GBH News. And a reminder that BPR will be on a summer break next week, replaying some of our favorite conversations. Everyone will be back here live on September 6th. So the next guest is one we have been looking forward to all week. He's closing the week here at the BPL. He's our big headliner.
No.
And yeah, you are.
That's too much pressure.
All right, I'll dial it down. He's continuing our Live Music Friday series. John Davidson is an actor, musician, all-around entertainer who's filled in for Johnny Carson.
Hi.
Hosted shows like the Hollywood Squares, Time Machine, That's Incredible.
You've got hundreds of people here that came by to see John Davidson.
Just to see you. They were lined up outside on down Boylston Street.
They are lined up.
While I was waiting to come on, I went out on the street. I thought I'd sing with my guitar outside. And the lady actually said, "Look, there's Glenn Campbell."
Is that true?
The story of your life, right? The story.
No. What I usually get is John Denver, because we have the same initials.
Yeah.
And I have to say, no, he's gone now. He's no longer with us. And one lady said, "Oh, that's right. He ran into a tree while he was skiing at Lake Tahoe."
No.
And I said, "No, that was Sonny Bono."
Yeah.
And anyway, it doesn't matter. I just glad to be alive. I got some news for you.
Ooh.
Since I saw you,
yes,
I turned 80.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. I turned 80 December the 13th of last year. I'm going to be 81 in like 6 months. I'm older than I've ever been in my life. I said to a friend of mine, "Do you think I look 80?" And she said, "No." Well, you used to, but not anymore.
But you have all this energy. I watched when you came in about an hour ago. You basically ran into the studio
because
here.
I was late.
You were you were a little bit late.
I tried to get down 93. Is anyone come?
Don't even.
Forget it.
Forget it.
We have a few issues with the MBTA.
The MBTA,
here,
our train's not running.
Yeah.
They shut down too low. We got a lot
All
of
of
problems.
a sudden, there was a parking lot.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to get here way too late, but fortunately, you had me come early, so I was here on time.
Because you're the headliner. You're at the end of the show.
I got to hear great segments about abortion, a black Jewish guy who's also gay, and I feel so boring in the midst of. I've never had an abortion. I don't have any
that
of these
you know of.
But I've helped with several abortions.
Okay, well, we should mention you're coming down from New Hampshire. You're coming from Sandwich, New Hampshire, because, wait for it, you're presiding over Club Sandwich, your club there.
Yes, I wanted to have a club. It's a barn in Sandwich, New Hampshire. Now, there's a Sandwich, Massachusetts, of course.
Yes.
Yep. And I've had people say, we're here at the club and there's nobody here. I say, yeah, but you're in Massachusetts in Sandwich. No, Sandwich, New Hampshire. It's near Squam Lake, where On Golden Pond was shot. Mm-hmm. And it's the dream of my life now to sort of reinvent myself. You know, I've sung in Las Vegas while I was doing Hollywood Square, and that's inedible. That's incredible. And hosting for Carson. I was running back and forth to Vegas doing my Vegas show with an 18-piece orchestra with strings and all. But my favorite part of the show was always when I could sing with my guitar by myself and be able to take those liberties with the song to really get into the songs and to do fun stuff anyway. And to do a lot of my original tunes. Mostly I write funny songs that are supposed to be funny and are often funny. Maybe like 70% of what I do at Club Sandwich are my original tunes.
Well, can we hear one of your tunes now?
Of course you can.
We'll invite you over to our stage.
I didn't bring the guitar for nothing.
John Davidson is joining with us. He's going to make his way over to play some music. What a thrill. I spent
How exciting is it to be with John Davidson?
It is ridiculously. I can't even tell you how excited I am. As has been previously established how much TV I have watched in my lifetime, I have definitely spent a lot of time with John Davidson, watching his great movies. I spent too much time on Hollywood Squares, both as a guest and as the host.
I'm ready now. You don't need to go on and on about me.
All right, take it away, John Davidson.
Here's a song I wrote in 2008. Remember what happened in 2008? The stock market fell apart. So it sort of relates to this year a little bit here. Did you know the stock market is down 400 points today? Somebody said, why are you still performing? Well, I wrote a song about it. I was getting close to my retirement day. Had my company stock and my 401k. South of France. Yep, that's where I was bound. Thought I'd drive my new Mercedes from town to town. I'd cruise up the Nile, vacation in Rome, go shopping in Boston for my second home. But the stock market tanks. Now I think it's quite clear I'll be driving this Yugo for at least another year. I got the blues, I got the Wall Street blues. I saw my CEO, he's wearing handcuffs on the news. And I can't even pay my ARP dues. All I got left is a song called the Wall Street Blues. Listen, I remember the 90s, back when we all were rich. Then Enron popped the bubble, and Martha Stewart dropped a stitch. Now the banks won't lend the money, the gas pumps took their toll. My portfolio's in a toilet, and the whole world's in a hole. I want a bonus like a CEO, yeah, then I could live in style. I'm tired of swimming at the Y. I want to cruise up the Nile. Why can't I get a bailout? Own my own home free and clear. I can't afford to retire. That's why I'm singing here with Jared and Sue. I got the blues, I got the Wall Street blues. I saw my CEO is wearing handcuffs on the news, and I can't even pay my AARP dues. The bear's back, the bullets moved off. All I got left is the Wall Street blues. Yeah! Please take your seats. Take your seats, please. Thank you for.
Back over to our counter here, and actually, as you're making your way over to the desk, why don't we just play? You have mixed it up with so many people. Here's you on Hollywood Squares mixing it up with Betty White.
This is a musical question, Betty. Listen, when I finish, you complete the phrase. Nobody does it better. Makes me feel bad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you. And now I need a rest.
Oh, that was fun.
So we have one of our texters, Paul from Worcester, who says now that you're 80, it's time for you to run for president. What do you think?
Well, you
have an announcement for us?
No, what a terrible job that is, being president. I mean, I'd rather be a singing entertainer. I'd rather be a clown than be a. Well, no, don't even go there. No.
Let's go back to all of the people. I mean, you have just been with basically everybody in Hollywood.
Well, that's what I loved about hosting Hollywood Squares. I met all these famous people, and and you begin to realize that we all put on our pants one leg at a time, See, Hollywood Squares, you make the whole week in one day. Did you know that? And Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, all those shows. You make 5 shows, actually 6 shows, so that every 5 weeks you can take a week off because you bank a show. And you have dinner, you wear out the first audience. You do the first audience for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then you change the audience because you've worn them out, or because they have to go somewhere. And then you do Thursday and Friday after you've been at this big buffet. Now at the buffet, everybody's drinking beer and wine, and there's a great food. And people bring their partners that they don't want to talk about. At that time, Robin Givens from...
she was married to Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
She was married, or at least dating him or something.
Yeah.
They were, So here's Mike Tyson came to one of our things, and no one knew that they were together. It was supposed to be a secret. At that time, Rock Hudson bought his boyfriend the thing, and nobody knew that he was gay. And so it was a very... let down your hair and just be yourself at this dinner. So it was great. I during those years, I did a centerfold, the stupidest. I made so many mistakes in my career. I did a centerfold for Cosmopolitan magazine. Now it wasn't naked. I was wearing a towel.
Yeah.
It was a.
So it was following Burt Reynolds?
Yeah.
Or did you do it before Burt Reynolds?
No, I was number 2. I was like the Avis of centerfold. I was trying harder. But it wasn't naked. It wasn't like Playgirl. I was wearing this towel. But on Hollywood Squares, I brought it back and showed it to Paul Lynde.
Oh.
And
I'm just excited about this now. Now you have my attention.
Paul Lynde took one look at my centerfold and he said, "Well, you should have been the ambassador to underdeveloped countries."
Oh, zinger!
Yeah, because they wrote all these jokes for him,
I'm looking at it. They just put it on our screen.
Oh, look at there you are.
Look at you. You're autographing your centerfold here.
It looks
that's
pretty good.
barely
That's
a towel, John Davidson.
Yeah.
No,
weren't you supposed to be?
It is a big towel, but it's still a towel.
I had people come up to me. Remember Art Linkletter?
Very well, yes.
Very conservative television person. He said, "Why did you do that?" He said, "Put on your clothes. What are you doing?" And it was just stupid. My manager talked me into it. He thought that would give some exposure. They made me Mr. February, which is the shortest month.
We'll wait for it.
Wait for it.
We'll wait for it.
But anyway, coming back to Boston, I will never forget when my first of all, I grew up in West Bridgewater, outside of Brockton. I parked my car.
Yeah.
I had a horse in my barn. And then we moved to White Plains, New York, because my dad was a Baptist preacher, and he got a bigger church in New York, so they made fun of my accent, so I changed it. But then I came back to Boston when I started my professional career in the 60s, And I played Blindströms. Do you remember Blindströms?
I do know.
Now,
Didn't
that
all,
was-
all the big people came and played?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Like Bette Midler and people, right?
Tony Orlando,
Yep.
Bobby Vinton, Ben Vereen. We all played Blindströms on our way to Vegas or to whatever. And then it burned down, you know.
Yeah.
But I will here's my memory of playing Boston back then.
Was that Scully Square? Was that no?
It was
that
south of Boston somewhere.
Yeah.
Where was Blindströms? Nancy?
Anybody remember Blindströms?
My oldest fan,
Yeah.
my longest fan is Nancy Lee here.
Nancy, will you figure
Where
out
was Blindströms?
South Boston. South Boston.
I know South Boston.
Yeah.
And but I forget where I stayed. But what I remembered for is I couldn't believe it. A maid came charging right in. I was stark naked. What I will never figure, she came right in on me, just barging in. I was not a stitch of clothes on. What I'll never figure out is what a maid was doing in an elevator at 3 o'clock in the morning. That was my wilder years.
Here we all
You know
thought
what?
you were America's sweetheart, along with
thanks.
Sally Field.
This gives me one of the things I love about my job is it gives me the opportunity to thank people that I otherwise would. I was a really ill little kid. I didn't go to school very much in
I'm so
elementary school.
sorry.
No, it all worked out fine, but I spent a lot of time watching television and watching Hollywood Squares.
Yes.
And when you were a guest, you were given a question once.
Wow.
And the question was, why in colonial times did the colonists burn down their house? And, of course, you had the answer. You had a funny thing that you said, and the answer which was so they could use the nails again. And then I went back to school because they had limited resources. So if they were done with the house, they'd burn it down, they'd take the nails. I had to take a test, and that question was on the test, and I got it right because of John Davidson and Hollywood Squares. Who says TV is an educational?
I'm an educator.
So I've been waiting all this time to thank you for that. So it's so exciting. I know you didn't really have that much to do with it, but thank you.
You know, they wrote all the answers.
I know.
Even for Paul Lynde, it was all written.
Yeah.
But then the clever people were the ones that it's the way they did it, and of course the way Paul Lynde talked. But then I became the host of Hollywood Squares in the '80s, and my center square was Joan Rivers, and then Tom Bergeron.
Our very own Tom Bergeron, another local boy.
I know. I called him. I barely knew him. He didn't even remember meeting me, but I had met him before. I said, "Could you come up to Sandwich, New Hampshire, and make a video introducing me at Club Sandwich?" And he said, "Of course I will." What a guy.
He's a
prince.
Yeah.
Just a great guy. He lives in New Hampshire now, but he made his name in Boston here. Yeah. So he came out and did a funny thing about that he couldn't remember who I was, or it was just a funny bit. And I still use that video to introduce me in the club. Yeah, I'm still there Friday and Saturday nights all through September. I go to October 2nd, and a lot of people drive up from Boston and then maybe stay overnight because it's like 2 hours. Yeah.
Should we give people another
Yes,
preview?
let's get another
You want
taste.
to?
Yes,
Invite
please.
you back
More
to
music.
our stage.
More music.
I'll set it up. You want to talk?
Okay, we'll
I'll tell you what
banter.
the song.
We'll banter.
It's my new record. It's on Spotify and Amazon and iTunes and all that. I've never had any records that did that. I'll tell you about it.
Okay, so we're going to hear some more music from John, the legendary John Davidson, who we're so thrilled to have with us here at the Boston Public
And we're
Library.
not even getting into a lot of his biography. There's a fabulous piece in the Washington Post, by the way, by another former Bostonian, Jeff Edgers, now at the Post, who spent time on a boat with John Davidson down in Mexico and really recaps a lot of your history. The largest number of fill-in times for Johnny Carson, John Davidson, all the movies, working with the Carpenters, Sally Field, and here he is again.
So I wrote this song on the boat in Mexico. Spend one night with an old guy, and you never go back to the boys. Spend one night with an old guy, let the little boys go play with their toys. I'm talking about a man who can slow down, turn your hot flashes into chills. You might need a break from his passion. You might want to hide his little pills. But don't you worry about your reputation. He'll never tell how you drove him insane. 'Cause he won't remember the things that you did. Hell, he won't remember your name. Everybody, spend one night with an old guy. You can hear the whole audience singing. No, you can't hear that because there's no mic out there. He'll play Johnny Mathis on his 8-track. His lava lamp will glow all through the night. He'll whisper, you're the prettiest girl in the world, 'cause he's probably losing his sight. But don't you worry. But who cares if it makes you feel... I'm 80 years old, so I blew the lyrics. So. And it makes you feel special. There's one more surprise still ahead. You're never gonna have to meet his parents. There's a pretty good chance they're dead. Oh, spend one night with an old guy, and you never go back to the boy. Now you won't find a guy more special. Not like they're beating down his door. And next morning, he'll have no job to dash off to. He can stick around, fix that cracked window or that squeaky kitchen cabinet door, glue that wobbly chair, or anything else around the house that needs a little tender loving care. You'll have a dandy, randy, handy man. Never go back to the boys. You got a dandy, randy, handy man, and you never go back to the boys. That's it.
Davidson, right here live at the Boston Public Library, reminding you can see John Davidson at Club Sandwich and Center Sandwich in New Hampshire. More of this fun stuff. You're like a walking history, John, of all the great things of Hollywood and entertainment. You're one of those Renaissance men. You've done everything: acting, singing, stage, movies, comedy, hosting, and now this chap.
I had an early manager that said to me, what do you want to do with your career? He saw me on Broadway. And I said, I just want to be a Broadway leading man. I just want to be Curly in Oklahoma. I want to be Starbuck in 110 in the Shade. I want to do... He said, a broader career is what I see you doing. Instead of being just a spear, be a pitchfork. Be a Swiss Army knife instead of just one blade. Mm-hmm. And so he designed my career, helped me design, to do everything, a Swiss Army knife, right? You know, I've never had a hit record. I've never won awards. I just love what I do. And I've gotten a lot of Newcomer of the Year awards. So I started off good and then sort of tapered off. But I love what I do, and I love doing Vegas. I've done Shakespeare. I'm a theater arts major. I've done plays, dramas, sitcoms with Sally Field, game shows, host a beauty pageant, whatever. And that's what's kept me alive, and that's why Club Sandwich in Sandwich, New Hampshire is so much fun, because I can do all that. I have rear screen projections, and I do a little bit of everything.
Well, here's the interesting thing, though. I'm not a performer. I just interview people.
That's a performance. What do you mean?
Well, no, but this is part of my question, because I don't see it that... Well, I guess in an underhanded way it might be, because I see my job as to just sit there and make sure the person I'm speaking with, if it's in this kind of climate, it's different if you're interviewing a politician or somebody of that nature, but you just want to make them look good. But you went on both sides, because you could do that sitting in Johnny Carson's chair and being the host of all the shows you did. But how did you have that restraint to do that there, but know that you were also an actor and you could fill a stage?
That was tough. And I took over Mike Douglas's show in the afternoon. For 2 years. Yep. Westinghouse, I took over the Mike Douglas show, and he moved on to another network. I had to realize that my job was to make the stars shine. You remember Merv Griffin?
Of course,
my favorite.
They always said, Merv made the stars shine. And so I had to figure out how to do that. It was a trick, because you're right, I'm an entertainer, and so I'm thinking about scoring myself. But the big thing is to set up the entertainer to shine. And I had to learn that. There was a learning curve, you know. I have a vocal coach now whose name is Vance Gilbert. If you ever want a great singer-songwriter, Vance Gilbert lives right here in Massachusetts. I study with him. He's my coach. I have people help me. Guitar, I'm trying to be a better guitarist. I'm still trying to do the perfect show. I'm still working on it. And I hope when I'm 90, I'm still performing, and I just kind of fall. I said, what happened? Well, he just fell over. I don't know. Drag him out. Because I found out what I like to do. And let me say that to people who are anywhere near my age. Try to figure out what you really like to do. So many people say, I've always wanted to learn to play the trumpet. But if you haven't, then you don't really want to do that. Don't lie to yourself. So I've set down certain basic things now in my 80s. Would you like to hear them?
Yes.
Maybe this would help somebody. I want to demand more of life in my 80s. Not less, more. There's a wonderful Dylan Thomas, do not go gentle into that good night. Rave against the dying of the light. I want to make sure that I'm with people who are excitable, who are passionate about something in my 80s. So often, don't we all find that we're with people who are just who have no passion? Get excited about something, even if it's collecting plastic bottles or whatever. Just get excited about something. Then, no more kitty litter. I've decided in my 80s I am not doing kitty litter anymore. I have given my cat away. I don't think humans should have to deal with kitty litter.
Here.
But you can't put the cat outside because coyotes will eat the cat. Dogs. I've given my dog to my son and his family. I don't want to pick up dog poop anymore. Now, I'm not saying it's not a good law. It's a wonderful law. But if you don't live somewhere where your dog can poop in the woods like a bear, then don't have a dog. I've given up pets for people. If you're lonely, if you want more love, if you want more attention, work on your friends more, right? I want to be with people who contribute to the quality of life of other people. That's what excites me. When I entertain people and they smile and go out cheering and standing up or whatever, I feel like I've contributed to humanity. There's enough terrible news around. So entertainment can be therapeutic, and I feel that's my place now in my 80s, and those are my decisions for being in my 80s.
That's John Davidson, people. John Davidson with his words to live by. You know what? I'm only 60, but I've given up washing lettuce. I only buy bagged lettuce now. So I'm on my way.
You're 60?
Yeah, and I'm not washing lettuce anymore.
You are not 60.
I am, 1961, but I'm not washing any more lettuce. I've given that up. I mean, I want to eat washed lettuce because I don't want to die, but I'm going to buy the bags of lettuce.
Or have the gastroenterologist we had on yesterday back to talk about those issues. So
I like washing lettuce. You push that thing, goes.
Well, good. We'll trade.
So, John Davidson, we want to do something a little unusual that we don't normally do.
We're going to take off our clothes?
No, we were.
No, you've already done that, but you know.
Yeah. So log on to YouTube, everybody.
We're on radio.
Oh, you go right there.
Oh, you might be going to YouTube.
This is the new digital age. So ordinarily, we'd move on to another segment, but we want you to stay with us for this last segment where we have callers calling in.
I have nothing more to say.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
We're going to
I'll make up stuff.
Keep you with us for a moment. So Sue's going to transition us into the next segment, and you'll stay.
We're going to be taking calls and texts from our listeners. We talked last week, I think Jared talked last week to Corby Kummer about the idea of what the drink of the summer is. You know, we have songs of the summer. We have drinks to White Claw was the big drink that year. Smirnoff Ice was a big drink, except it doesn't seem this year that we have a drink of the summer. Some, including myself, have argued the Dirty Shirley is the drink of the summer, which is a Shirley Temple. You knew her, I know. Shirley Temple of Doom is another if you want to add rum. So we're wondering what your drink of the summer is. You can call us at 877-301-8970, and you can talk with us, and John Davidson will give us his expertise about what the drinks of the summer could be.
I'm still trying to get over the fact that you're 60.
I like this. See, another childhood dream has come true for me. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break.
Yes.
We're going to take
A American workers across many sectors are attempting to form unions.
We are determined to make things better for ourselves and hopefully better for strippers that come after us.
We're talking about the recent efforts by exotic dancers to unionize. I'm Melissa Harris Perry, and that's next time on The Takeaway from WNYC and PRX.
This afternoon at 2, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And Walden Local Meat, 100% grass-fed and pasture-raised beef, pork, and chicken from local farms, hand-delivered to your door, committed to supporting a better food system. Membership options and more at waldenlocalmeat.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jared Bowen here with Sue O'Connell, and we now have our third co-host in John Davidson.
My dreams are coming true. My childhood dreams are coming true.
And as we talked earlier, we're talking about the drink of the summer. This is just the last few minutes of the show before Boston Public Radio takes a little summer break too. So we're settling into summer cocktail mode.
I have a summer drink.
You have a summer drink?
What is it?
Is this on? I can't hear.
Yeah, just put it down.
Grapefruit juice and maybe gin. I drink too much white wine. And white wine just makes me tired somehow. But grapefruit juice and either vodka or gin that's my summer pick me up with lots of ice.
Yeah, I can't drink gin. It makes me hiccup.
Oh, really?
Always, yeah. So that's
well, usually a gin and tonic is my go-to, but this summer it's Negronis. We're already launching into it. We want to give people our number. It's 877-301-8970. Again, 877-301-8970. You'll be on with Sue, me, and John Davidson.
All right, let's go to Linda in Boston. Linda, welcome to Boston Public Radio. What's your drink of the summer?
Hi, thank you. You know, I don't have a drink to tell you, but I have a wonderful memory of Mr. John Davidson from when I, many years ago, was a little high school student, and my dance teacher, I wonder, Mr. Davidson, if you remember him, he was the choreographer at the Kenley Players in Ohio.
Yes.
One summer, you were headlining as Curly in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I
and
did.
He brought you.
I did
do you
2 shows.
Mario?
Yes, I do. He was much more than just a choreographer. He was really a director. But yeah, I can't think of the director that did those. Yeah, I did Music Man there a lot. I played Harold Hill. Well, you got trouble, my friends. Right here, I say trouble right here in River City. I did Music Man there, and then Oklahoma. Yeah.
Yes. That's what we saw. He was rehearsing you, and we were peeking over looking into our dance studio, so thrilled and excited to see you. Were so handsome and so wonderful.
I love doing. I did productions of Curly till I was 55, and the reviewer actually said, "Isn't John Davidson a little older?" Ouch. And he was right. I mean, Curly is a young buck. Curly should be 21 and 23. Anyway, thanks for calling in, and thanks for remembering that. Yeah, John Kenley was an amazing showman and brought so much showmanship to everything he did. He always put high-kicking dancers into every show he did, even some Chekhov.
We always find a way to work it in. We're here with John Davidson. We're taking your calls about drinks. And John, we have Sarah on YouTube who says her drink of the summer is the Boston Harbor, which is an extra dirty martini. Before the Boston Harbor was cleaned up, an extra dirty martini.
So we have this from a texter. I moved to Santa Barbara, California in 1977. I bought an acoustic guitar off a young woman who told me that when she purchased the Aria guitar, she was given a custom guitar in error that was supposed to go to John Davidson. They gave her the one that I bought for her for free for bringing back John's guitar, and she still has hers.
Oh my goodness.
That's where it went.
All of these threads leading back to you.
When you play guitar, I have like 7 or 8 guitars. I don't know why. I have too many guitars, but I play a Taylor now. A lot of people like Martin, but I play a Taylor. And I need to play guitar better. I have a bass player, John Petroselli, is my bass player who sings and plays with me an upright bass now at Club Sandwich. But I brought in a bass player because my guitar playing is not as good as my singing. You know, I'm a storyteller who plays guitar as a platform to sing and tell jokes. You know.
All right, we got some other texters here with their drinks. We've got the Francois Boston Cucumber Martini. I don't know what that is, but that sounds good. We've got the Aperol Spritz, cranberry and orange juice, an all-time drink. And then one person has gone to the mocktails for summer drinks to keep you sharp.
By the way, I think the trick to a gin and tonic is to use lemon and not lime. I also add mint. I grow mint in a little pot, and mint is a weed, so it grows really well, even in drought conditions. And
Mint is a weed?
Kind of. It just spreads everywhere.
What's the definition of a weed?
I don't know. Maybe I'm making... See, now I'm being challenged by John Davidson. Do we see how he flips just like that?
We believe what you say.
A weed is something you don't choose to plant that grows anywhere. How about that?
Well, it does. Oh, that's what I mean. Yeah, it spreads rapidly.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Wayne in the car. Hi, Wayne.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone.
Are you stuck in the traffic on 93 as I was this morning? No.
I just about to cross the Zachem. Yes, absolutely. So, summer drink of choice would be the peppered strawberry gin and tonic with Bombay Sapphire.
Oh,
gee, that sounds hard to make.
Muddle the strawberries. Yes.
You make it yourself?
Yes, with a couple of grinds. Yeah. Oh no, yeah, absolutely. Make those at home. A couple of grinds of black pepper, and muddle the strawberries. And
yeah. So you drink alone? Is that? Do you think that's a good idea?
No, my wife and I both enjoy them.
Good. How long have you been married?
38 years in November.
Yeah. I could go into stories about marriage now. Anyway, but let's not talk about that.
All right.
But yeah, well, that's great. Well, thanks for calling in.
Thanks, Colin Wayne. You know what the ultimate summer drink is? The Mai Tai, I think. I'm a big fan of the Mai Tai.
I forgot about Mai Tai.
Mai Tais are great. I mean, you can't drink too many of them because you get the sugar hangover the next day.
It's a Polynesian drink.
Yeah. I think it was invented in California, actually. But the Mai Tai is a great drink. It's got fruit, rum, and other things.
And lots of little plastic flamingos and mermen and women.
Umbrellas.
Umbrellas.
That's what you need. All right, we'll go to Nancy in Marblehead. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. We've been drinking what we call the Davidge Daily Drink. It's a mixture of lemonade and limeade, half and half, very refreshing. Add gin and vodka if you want. Fabulous summer drink.
Is that your family name? Is that what you've named the drink?
That's our family name, yes. Of course, you have to brand it, right?
You live in Marblehead?
Yes.
Oh, my media person, who is Amy Malkoff, she lives in Marblehead. I love Marblehead. It's right next to Salem. Yeah.
Right next to Salem, one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Yes, it is. Except for the month of October.
Yeah.
You don't want to go anywhere.
You try to leave town.
You stay home.
My daughter used to live there. Now she's moved into town. And my daughter is now a professor at BU. She's in her mid-30s, and she teaches voice and speech. And she's an incredible person. I have 3 kids. Wait a minute. Nancy, we're talking about you. Let's not go on. Sorry.
Nancy's gone. Nancy's moved on. Okay. But we can talk more about you and your 3 kids.
It's okay.
Well, you would love Marblehead because you're a sailor, and that you can obviously sail from Marblehead.
Yes.
You spent a lot of your life on a boat?
I did. My last boat, when I was turning 50, I thought I was going to die soon. I thought my life was going to be over. I was going to start drooling. And so I had an old classic diesel trawler, and I navigated it with my wife and my son at the time and several other people. It was 96 feet long. It was too big. But I navigated through the Panama Canal from Ventura, California, took 9 months off because Hollywood Squares and $100,000 pyramid had just been canceled. And I thought, I'm just going to do whatever I want to do because I'm going to be gone soon. And I navigated through the Panama Canal to Florida, and then I sold the boat after 17 years. But that's another case of doing what you want to do. The runway is getting shorter. Now, this was 30 years ago, and I'm still alive. But I still say to you, if it's something you want to do, even if your partner doesn't want to do it with you, do it on your own. Don't worry about money. You can make money again. If you once made money, you can make it again. But if you want to go live in a mountain cabin, or if you want to hike from Boston to Portsmouth, do it. Do it. Don't just talk about it. Just do it. not ready, aim, fire. Ready, fire, aim.
We're talking to John Davidson. You're listening to Boston Public Radio. I'm Sue O'Connell with Jared. And we've also talking about life and cocktails as well. Some more texters have joined in. This summer's drink is bourbon. It doubles as a hand and mouth sanitizer, so no COVID. Thank you, Steve from Marlboro, for that. And another one is crushed watermelon lemonade over the rocks with some Tito's vodka. Tito's certainly making a big inroad here. So.
Sounds very lovely. Let's go back to our callers and Harry from Quincy. Hi, Harry.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for your show. I would suggest, considering, except for Jared, considering the age of the people involved here, I would suggest perhaps Geritol on the rocks with a twist of laxative.
Oh, that sounds delightful.
What the hell is that? What, just to move things along?
Really, I just called to... Absolutely. Ready, fire, aim. I really just called to say thank you, John Davidson, for giving two stout middle fingers to the ageism that exists in the entertainment business.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes.
I'm a background actor, and I just turned 60, and I'm doing it full time now. Because, like you said, if you love it, do it, and do it now. Because the runway is shorter every single day. And to see you out there doing it at 80 and entertaining and making people happy is just the most beautiful thing. And thank you for that.
Why? Do you think 80's old?
Not at all. Okay. Not at all.
I tell you, I feel just like I did when I was 30. I really do. It's just that I can't move my legs. No, but you do get tired more. And I just had a knee replacement. I've had a knee replacement. I got new eyes. I got new lenses. Many parts that need to be updated, but they don't have parts that can be. Let's not go there.
Your dimples are holding up.
Yeah, the dimples are holding up, and the hair is holding up. So you're in great.
Yeah, I still got my hair.
Yeah.
It just keeps growing. I'm like an albino chia pet. It just keeps growing, and but hair is the only thing my body can still produce.
We'll take it.
That was a joke.
I got it. We'll wait for everyone to catch up. All right. So here's another texter, Jared. Someone agreeing with you. Lemon elevates gin and tonics to a new level. Drink of the summer for the past 3 summers has been ranch water, which is tequila, Topo Chico, agave nectar, and lime. It's always best when working in the sun.
Topo Chico was on Ed Sullivan, right?
Topo Chico. I don't know who that is.
Oh, I kind of remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what a delightful way to end our summer season.
Let's have another round of applause for John Davidson.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for staying with us. It's been a delight for both of us to co-host with you.
What a pleasure.
Yes.
No, you did.
Yes, we did. That's what I'm saying. I put it right on my LinkedIn profile.
Well, thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. You can keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Tune in on Monday. We're bringing you some of our favorite conversations on BPR, as well as all of the greater Boston political debates ahead of the September 6th primary election. Plus, we'll hear from author Ben Shattuck on his new book, 6 Walks in the Footsteps of Henry David Thoreau. And a reminder that BPR will be on a much-deserved summer break next week, replaying some of our favorite conversations. Jim and Marjorie will be back on the air and at the BPL on Tuesday, September 6th. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Connolly, Mackenzie Farkas, with additional support provided by Haley Lerner. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Bill Piccatelli is on our board today, and our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. And a special thanks to our BPL engineering team, Sai Patel, Cullen Cockrell, and Angelica Marrero.
Good job, Jared. Reminder that John Davidson Club Sandwich in Center Sandwich, New Hampshire. Make sure you go see him. It's a delight.
Through early October, I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Sue O'Connell. Have a great rest of your summer. We'll be back together again, I'm sure.
We will. Have a great afternoon and rest of August.